Sorry, I'm almost done.
You're all good.
All right, you ready?
Born ready.
I somehow doubt that. So, all right. How you doing, everybody, and welcome to the Moffett on the Mic radio show. We are live on Monday night, courtesy of the A1 Sports Network. I am Craig Moffett, and of course, this show would not be complete without the production stylings of the one and only Chris Klim.
What's up, Craig?
Klim, please excuse my voice.
It's okay.
So, I was calling back-to-back hockey games on Saturday and Sunday, and for the PAL Junior Islanders. And Saturday night, it went to a 7-round shootout.
Jesus.
And the Junior Islanders won in the 7th round.
Oh, let's go.
And then last night, it went to they played the same team back-to-back nights. They went to overtime, and they won with a minute into overtime. So it was a very winning weekend for our team. So, I mean, between the Jets winning yesterday, the Islanders have been on a tear. They've won 3 in a row. They play the Flyers tomorrow night. Brooklyn won last night, beat the Portland Trailblazers. And I won $2.50 in FanDuel. So
let's go.
See? We're all winning here on the show. So we thank everybody for watching. You could follow the show on Instagram at Moff on the Mic. You can follow the show on my Facebook page as well. It is Mega Guest Monday here on Moff on the Mic. And we are thrilled to have back 2 of our favorites in about, let's say, 15 minutes, 10 to 15 minutes. We are going to be talking to, back with us after a long hiatus. We'll be talking to the co-host of Helmets and Heels on the 1010XL 92.5 FM radio in Jacksonville, and now host of the Making Monsters podcast on Windy City Gridiron for SB Nation. Our dear friend, the one who we always call when we want to vent about Urban Meyer, and that is Taylor Dahl. So she'll be joining us at 8 o'clock. And at 9 o'clock, who better to have to talk about everything Jets and everything else going on in the world of sports than another one of our good friends. He is the host of the Jake Asman Show on YouTube. He is the co-host of The Wheelhouse on ESPN Radio in Houston. We are talking about the one and only Jake Asman. He will be here at 9 o'clock. Talking Jets, talking Houston Texans football. We're going to get into some basketball. We're going to get into we always like to do a hodgepodge with Jake because we don't have him on for very long. So we like to throw as many questions as we can at him. And if you have any questions for Taylor, if you have any questions for Jake, feel free to comment on the live feed. Klim will read the questions or post them on the show. You could also, as we said before, you could subscribe to the podcast courtesy of Apple Podcasts and like and comment and leave us a 5-star review. So busy weekend yesterday. Obviously, yesterday the big story all weekend with New York is Mike White, and he is pretty much taking New York once again by storm after having a tremendous game yesterday afternoon. There's no other way to describe it, as the Jets win easily 31-10 over the Chicago Bears. Bears did not have Justin Fields. I don't care, because no one felt sorry for us when we didn't have Breece Hall and Elijah Vera Tucker, and when we had our fair share of injuries.
Mm-hmm.
It's a war of attrition in the NFL. Everybody knows that. So, here's what I'll say, because we didn't have a show last week when the whole Zach Wilson thing went down. I'm a little pissed off at Zach Wilson because, I want to see him succeed. Yeah. I don't want to see him be a failure, And the one thing I wasn't really a fan of, the way the narrative was turning on Zach, it became less about his play on the field and then more about this talk about white privilege, which I was really kind of blown away by. And it was like one of the guys who said it, and it kind of bothered me in a way, like Booger McFarland on ESPN kind of made some comment that the reason why Zach could never be a leader is because, he's had a silver spoon in his mouth his whole life. So he hasn't, he doesn't, he doesn't know what it's like to lead because he's never had to be a leader. He's never had to, something along those lines. And I guess my thing is like when you start doing conversations like that, that's the shit that kind of bothers me because it becomes less about the guy's play on the field, which was not good. And I'll be the first to admit that. You can't defend the indefensible. And his play was really crappy. But when you start getting into the guy's personal life and you start getting into all this stuff, I feel like it's a cheap shot. It's a low blow that you're going to take a shot at him because he's like, well, he's a white quarterback who feels a sense of entitlement. And so you're telling me that a black quarterback doesn't feel that way?
Right.
Kyler Murray doesn't feel a sense of entitlement to the starting job, even though Arizona sucks. I mean, you see what I mean? Arizona, Kyler Murray doesn't feel a sense of entitlement to the starting job because he makes $250 million a year. Russell Wilson doesn't feel a sense of entitlement to the job after making $250 million. I mean, the truth is that Zach just wasn't playing well. Mm-hmm. And the defense in the Patriots game was unbelievable. I mean, you couldn't have asked for a better defensive game. Mm-hmm. And I'm inclined to agree with a lot of people who were talking about the game that said if you had a marginally good Zach Wilson, you would have won that game.
Yes.
Okay. And the fact is he was just outright terrible. And he was starting to frustrate the receivers on the Jets. He was starting to frustrate Elijah Moore. Well, he already knew Elijah Moore was frustrated. But he was starting to frustrate Garrett Wilson. Starting to frustrate Denzel Mims. And the Jets are in a playoff hunt. They can't afford to lose games right now.
Like Laws, how can they not give Zach the Bears game to bounce back? I think that is just ridiculous.
Because what if he didn't bounce back?
Yeah.
Okay. What if he didn't? What if he I thought about this a lot. And I think I'm going to say this right now because this is a kind of a testament to the Jet fan base. I personally think that you can now put Zach Wilson in what I like to call the Adam Gase Club. Now, what do I mean about the Adam Gase Club? It doesn't matter what he's going to do. Everybody's going to hate him.
Yeah.
Everybody's going to hate him. So, Mike White throws for 300 and what did he do? 315? Is that what the total was last night for his passing? Klim?
Yeah. It was. Oh, gee, I gotta look it up. I don't remember off the top of my head.
So let me ask you a question, right? Let's say let's say we give Zach Wilson the benefit of the doubt. We say, okay, we're going to start you against Chicago. And Zach Wilson throws for 2 touchdowns. He throws for like 210 yards. No interceptions. Jets win the game. I personally think it would have been dismissed because Jet fans don't want to deal with him anymore. Which, again, Jet fans are Jet fans. They get rid of everybody. Mike White lasted 2 starts before they were ready to give the game back to Zach. So they just want to win at this point. You and I both know that if Zach Wilson puts up a decent game against a very bad Bears team, it's going to be dismissed.
Right.
They're going to say, well, it was the Bears. Who cares? Big deal. They didn't have Justin Fields. They didn't have these guys. That's what's going to be. It's going to be dismissed. It is easier to get behind a backup quarterback in a game like yesterday because you're kind of just playing with house money at that point. You're not really – Mike White doesn't have to prove anything because it's his first game starting this whole season.
Right.
Zach Wilson, anything short than a Super Bowl at this stage of his life, he's not going to win over the Jet fan. He's just not. And I want to see Zach succeed. I want to see Zach be a good quarterback. But it's pretty obvious there's something going on with him because he can't make the easy throws. He's sailing throws over receivers' heads. It's tough. It's tough for me to sit there and say, let's give Zach one more game. You got to give Robert Saleh a lot of credit because he made a very tough decision because he's taking the other guys in the locker room into account. And it's pretty obvious that the locker room just didn't, maybe the locker room just had a problem with him. Maybe
No, you're absolutely right. I was saying, I hate to cut you off, but our esteemed guest is here.
All right, put her through. Joining us right now, she's the co-host of the Helmets and Heels show on 1010XL. She also has a new podcast called Making Monsters on the Windy City Gridiron or for SB Nation. But more importantly, when we want to joke about Urban Meyer, he is our number one call. Right, Clem?
Oh, yes.
We are talking to the one and only Taylor Dahl. Hey, Taylor, how are you?
Hey, guys, what's going on?
Well, unfortunately, we can't make fun of Urban Meyer anymore, although he looked like a bit of a tool. I was watching on Fox College Football Saturday, one Saturday, and he's had like sunglasses on, almost like not a care in the world about the drama with Jacksonville.
It's wild. I really think he's going to end up getting another coaching job like in college, and it's amazing, but whatever. Yeah. I'm just glad he's not here anymore. I'm glad he's gone.
I'm sure the entire city of Jacksonville is happy he's not there.
Oh, yeah.
So I wanted to start with, we'll do my first question about Trevor Lawrence.
Mm-hmm.
We always tend to talk about him, of course, whenever you come on the show. Yesterday, Jacksonville comes from behind to beat the Baltimore Ravens. And in his second season, for me, like his numbers are pretty solid for a second season quarterback. They don't necessarily scream that whole once in a generational talent that everybody was talking about.
Mm-hmm.
And the Jaguars are 4-7.
Yeah.
So in your opinion, do you feel that Trevor Lawrence in Jacksonville so far is underwhelming?
I would say it's been a little bit of a roller coaster personally. And Jags fans here, 100% on board. I think that it's hard, obviously. You know how many times like a guy gets drafted 1 and it doesn't work out or whatever. I think because there was so much hype behind Trevor Lawrence. I mean, it wasn't just like this guy's going to be a good quarterback. Like you said, like the word generational was thrown out there, and he was the most ready NFL quarterback in however long, in decades. So I think people expected him to come in and it just be successful right away. Obviously last year took a big step back with everything. So that didn't help. But I do think fans are starting to see what they know Trevor can be. In November, he has the best completion percent. He completes like 77% of his passes in this last month, and then also has the second best touchdown to interception ratio. His one problem is he doesn't hold the ball well. He lost a fumble yesterday. He had one game a few weeks ago where he lost, I want to say it was 5 turnovers, 4 of them, 3 or 4 fumbles, like just things like that. He makes little mistakes. But this season's been weird because it started off with Washington, and everyone was like, okay, this is a game like you have to win if you're Jacksonville. Washington's kind of surprising right now, though. I think they're a 7-win team, which is kind of weird to see. But so I think at the time, though, when Jacksonville was playing Washington, they were like, okay, Washington's a bad team, so we should win this game. And it ended up not being the case, obviously. But then they almost blow out the Chargers. They almost blow out the Colts. And then so people were like, all of a sudden back on this, like, okay, he's the man. Like, this is it. This is what we've been waiting for. We're going to beat every team by 20 plus points. And then when that didn't happen, when they started having some really bad games, and you lose to Houston, who's probably the worst football team in the league. When you lose to Houston, that kind of brought people back to earth and was like, okay, this guy still has things to work on. But there's definitely, I think, every week progress. And one of the major things to me, I think, was that we're seeing him be a little more comfortable. I was worried within the first 5-6 weeks because whenever Trevor was in an uncomfortable situation, when he was getting pressured, which honestly their line has been pretty good, like way better than people thought they were going to be. And so he doesn't get pressured a whole ton. Honestly, he hasn't been sacked a lot. But the games when he has been higher pressure rates, that's when a lot of mistakes have happened. Games when he had to until this last week. That's why I think the Jags needed this win, like a win like that big time, because previous to this last week, when Trevor was in a situation where it was like, go down and get it done, some bad mistake, whether it be an overthrow, whether it be a fumble, whether it be a turnover, whether it be just bad decision-making and going to the wrong guy, it would always happen. And it was coming to the point where I was getting a little worried because I was like, this guy is supposed to be someone, like, we're almost 2 years into this now, and you got, like, I was told he was supposed to be ready. Like, okay, he's going to be like, it'll take a few games to get adjusted, but he's going to be ready for the NFL. And I was a little concerned for a minute that he wasn't going to be able to be a quarterback who handled pressure very well. But that's obviously this last game kind of showed he was able to come drive them down, 75 yards in a minute and a half or whatever it was. And then a 2-point conversion and things like that build confidence, obviously. And that's huge for Trevor, I think.
All right. So before I get into my question, we have a comment for you and from one of our loyal fans, Mike Laws. How dead is my Jaguars under 6.5 wins bet?
I don't honestly, I'm not confident that it's dead. The Jaguars schedule for the rest of the season is still pretty tough. Detroit, I think, has started to find their groove a little bit, and that's who they have this week. I don't think that's an easy set win. One of the crazy things to me this year is how low like the margin of victory is, and that's over the entire NFL. I think I read it's like 8.4, which is insane to think about how many close games they are. I picked the Jags to win 7 this season, which I'm not confident they'll hit, but because this is what they do. Like they'll have a couple like terribly bad games, and then they'll have a game where they won like this, and people will be like, "Oh, they can make the playoffs." Like now, that's where everyone in Jacksonville's like, they're going to the postseason now. Like it's happening. I'm like, relax. They have 4 wins, but that 6.5 does get a little scary if Trevor continues to play the way that Trevor's playing.
Now, like to even go off that, like you mentioned, like the way, like you got nervous with the way Trevor was playing at the beginning of the year, and now he's starting to like find himself. How much of a factor does like we mentioned earlier when we were joking around Urban Meyer not being there, and it looks like these Jaguars players buying into Doug Peterson's system?
Yeah. Oh, I think Doug Peterson is such a huge factor, and everything that's happened on this team from the time he took over to now, and even to that game, like the aggressiveness of Doug Peterson, certain times this season, people are like, what is he doing? Like going for 4th and 2s rather than kicking field goals, because the Jags have lost some games by field goals. And you look back at it, and Doug Peterson's aggressiveness has, like, you could say, lost those games at times, but it pays off. And that's the kind of guy you signed up with, Doug Peterson, but the locker room loves him. The guys respect him. And I think that's huge. I think it's really big to have a coach that, number one, can coach and like can coach in the NFL, but also a coach who your guys respect. And I think because you see it all over the league, once you start losing that respect for whether it be your head coach or whether it be a coordinator or your quarterback, things go downhill pretty quickly. So I think that Doug Peterson has been a major factor in these games being very close this year, and the wins that have happened, you can directly correlate to Doug Peterson.
Right before the trade deadline, the Jets and Jaguars made a trade, of course, with the Jets getting James Robinson. And there seemed to be some conflicting stories with regards to how the Jaguars handled James Robinson. There was like an injury involved, which James Robinson sort of denied. I was hoping maybe you could just kind of fill in like maybe the blanks or some background as to what was there a rift between Robinson and the team? I know he wasn't getting a lot of carries because ETN all of a sudden had come on really strong, and he started taking over, having these big games, and Robinson kind of got pushed to the back burner. I was hoping maybe you could just kind of maybe fill in the blanks on what really happened between the team and James Robinson, and was it like a really bad rift?
Look, I wish I knew more than I did with James Robinson, but I'll tell you, I've thought for the past 2 years the Jags have treated James Robinson badly. And this goes back to, I don't like the way that Urban Meyer used him last year. And they either, in the beginning of the season, it was like nothing at all. And then all of a sudden he was taking all of the workload and was having like almost 40 carries a game, and he was getting beat up. And then obviously he had an injury. So all of this stuff started happening. But even through the offseason, I just didn't like it. I didn't like that backtracks to drafting ETN. I was like, I mean, I get it, but you have this guy who's proven himself and like proven his loyalty to this team. But it's hard. I get when you're in the business decision-making side of it, it's a little different. But I think even from this offseason, it was pretty much like, okay, is one of them going to be a third down back, and one of them's going to be because ETN's obviously a different back than James Robinson. ETN can pass catch. ETN is kind of a little more finesse and stuff like that. And James Robinson's kind of that like bowling ball, hard hitter type of running back. So I thought they were honestly just going to kind of split it like that. And the season started pretty heavy on James Robinson. And I don't know if that was because they were a little scared of ETN's injury flaring up or getting a little worse, or maybe because I remember around the draft time, he was like, I'm 80% good. And I was like, 80% good and camp starts next month doesn't sound good to me. So I think they were a little scared, but I didn't like it because James Robinson in the first, I want to say 3-4 weeks had 3 touchdowns during that time and within the first 4 weeks, and was getting like the majority of carries and was playing really well. And then all of a sudden it was just like, you didn't see him. And it was Travis Etienne. And it was, I guess, I wish I knew more. I really did, because it was confusing to us. Like here in Jacksonville, we were like, why aren't we giving the ball to James Robinson? Because there's certain times when, yes, Etienne's probably the better option, but James Robinson, he's one of those guys. Like I said, he can get through the middle. He'll knock some guys over, get those yardage after carries type of things. And all of a sudden, the last game before they traded him, we were all kind of talking. We're like, something's not right, because he was barely used whatsoever. And they were even asking James Robinson after the game, like, what's going on? And he was like, I don't know. Like, we're fine though. And the next thing you know, he was traded, and they were asking him, okay, well, were you not played as much because you were getting traded? And he was like, I don't know. And I don't know, honestly, if it's an answer we'll ever really find out. I think that part of me wants to say that Doug Peterson was trying to see how much of a workload Etienne could carry. And when Etienne proved he could, he was like, okay, we can cut ties with James Robinson. Yeah,
because like, to be perfectly, I agree with you. Like I think since day one, they've never really treated James Robinson correctly in Jacksonville. I mean, his rookie year, a guy went undrafted and gets 1,000 yards for you guys.
Yeah.
Then the following year, it's like, oh, let's just draft Travis Etienne in the first round. It's like, what? That doesn't make any sense. Like, I mean, granted, Travis Etienne, phenomenal player. Yeah. I'm not disclosing that, but it was just like, and I remember when we had you on after the draft last year, we were like, what the hell is Urban Meyer doing drafting Travis Etienne when you have a star running back in James Robinson?
And and you needed a million other positions. That was wild to me. Like if the Jags were like set and didn't need other things, but that was the one position you were comfortable. Like you had at this point Trevor Lawrence, you had James Robinson, you had a couple defensive pieces here, but there was a lot of gaps on the offensive line. There was a lot of gaps defensively. There's a lot of gaps in the secondary that still need to be fixed and haven't been fixed, because you trade up to get Devin Lloyd and you get Travis Etienne, and you do all these weird things in the draft of like positions that those are like positions you more have set. So I agree. I was confused. And I remember telling you guys when it happened that I just don't think personally I think you could find really good running backs in like late second, third rounds very easily. So it was odd to me to stretch that. But like you said, I mean, I'm not saying Etienne isn't great, because he's been really fun to watch and Jags fans love him. And obviously that connection with Trevor helps, but.
No, Travis Etienne, though, he was hurt yesterday, foot injury. I know that because he crushed my fantasy football team.
Oh, no.
So what's the status of his injury? Are they kind of downplaying it? He kind of was, I think he seemed to downplay it yesterday after the game. So I just want to see what the latest was on his injury.
So what it seems like he's fine. From what I've heard, how honest this is, I don't know, because I know sometimes they'll shove things to the side a little bit if they're still waiting for certain test results or whatever. But Doug Peterson said after the game that Etienne could have even played yesterday, but they didn't want to risk it. And then today he confirmed that he's okay, and barring a setback, he'll play this weekend.
Well, it's funny because we have a go ahead, Klim. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was just saying, Craig, you go.
Yeah, because your video was frozen, so I was like, okay, I guess he wants me to ask another question, and then it was like he just jumps in. No, because I was saying, like, a lot of coaches do this now, where it's like if it's not broken right off the bat or dislocated, it's like day to day. Where Robert Saleh with the Jets does this a lot, where the guy could have one of a podcast I listened to said this guy could be missing a limb, and Robert Saleh would say he's day to day. It was like with Justin Fields, it was like the guy has a separated shoulder and ligament damage, and he's a game time decision.
Yeah, I was like, there's no way if they put Justin Fields in this weekend, I'm done. Like, I don't want to cheer for this team anymore.
Oh my! So to go back to the Jaguars for a minute, like Christian Kirk was a big, question mark coming into this season. Not like why did they sign it? It was like you gave him this much money and he really hasn't proven anything. But do you think that's money well spent now, because he is having a pretty good season if you look at the numbers?
Yeah, and look, I've had to admit it, like live on air on Helmets and Heels, that I was wrong about that one because I not necessarily talk trash about it. I wasn't like I hate Christian Kirk because honestly, Christian Kirk was on my list of guys that I was like, okay, go after Christian Kirk, whether it be the Jags or the Bears. But I think the money kind of stamped a little bit of like, what are you doing? Why are you paying this guy $18 million? And he's definitely like a lot of people, you know, whatever. He's a slot receiver. He can only do this and all of these things. So you group him into like one type of wide receiver, and that one type of wide receiver usually doesn't get paid that.
Right.
But number one, I think the Jags have to. The problem with being a Jacksonville Jaguar is you're not going to get these guys that just want to come play for Jacksonville because it's fun to play in Jacksonville and for the history, because that's not there. So they do have to overpay guys. And sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. I think that this one, honestly, Christian Kirk's been playing well. Him and Trevor it took them a minute, but they did start to really build a chemistry. And you're seeing that a lot, especially in like bigger moments of games. I still think Christian Kirk's a wide receiver too. I think the Jags need another guy, which Calvin Ridley, I guess next year could be that guy potentially because they went and got him. But he can't play this year. So it'll be interesting if they even make another move. But that was my whole thing. To me, it was more so like this guy's clearly a wide receiver too, and you're paying him closer to a wide receiver one, and asking him to do a lot too with a young quarterback and not much else. I don't think many people who knew who Zay Jones was before this year, and some people still may not, but he's actually been like the guy for like 50-50 balls, contested catches. When Trevor just needs to launch it downfield, Zay's that guy right now. So those are things we kind of had question marks on, and I think that's why it was such a big deal. But I think at this point, Jags fans are kind of like, all right, it's been worth it because he's playing to that contract at least right now.
I want to get back. You mentioned Calvin Ridley, and I meant to ask you about this because that was a trade that I thought was very odd, I guess, at the time that they announced it, but maybe I'm starting to figure out why they made the trade. And with Calvin Ridley, basically, if he joins the team in 23, he really wouldn't have played in about 2 years because the 1 year suspension this year for gambling, and then last year, the year before that, when he had to take a break due to mental health issues.
Yeah.
Do you consider the Ridley trade a risk? And do you think in a weird way this is the Jaguars saying we're all in 2023?
Yeah, I think it's exactly that. I think it's a huge risk, first of all, because we don't even know when/if he'll get reinstated. We're thinking yes, because it was gambling. It wasn't like he like killed somebody. But it's still like to them, like the NFL sometimes treats those things even harsher than some of the things they probably should. But they say February, but a lot of the things also say like if/when that happens. So who knows when he can actually start meeting with the teams and do all of the meetings and work out and whatever. And like you said, at that point, it'll be almost 2 years since he's been on the football field. And we saw a glimpse of that with Deshaun Watson in the preseason. Deshaun looked awful, like very, very bad in the preseason. And because he hadn't, like, there's that rust factor for sure. And you can't deny that. But I think this is a big statement for the Jags saying like, next year is it. Like, you know, we said that it would take 2 to 3 years. Next year is Trevor's year 3. And I think that they're also kind of saying they wanted to give Trevor a little bit of something too. Like, okay, here's something else to look forward to. We're not just going to leave you hanging. There's nothing we can do, not much we can do right now. They don't have a lot of money. They spent a lot of money in this last offseason. So they didn't have a ton to make a move at the trade deadline. And I think they were trying to still let Trevor know that, like, okay, we're trying to figure it out. We've got some stuff going on, whatever we can do. But it's a very interesting move to me. And I think that it is a gamble, but also the way it ended up working out too. It was like the weirdest compensation trade too, because it's like a fifth or maybe a second, like it depends on so many things. So a fifth round or whatever, you know, if it ends up being a fifth or a sixth and it doesn't work out, that's one thing. But if it ends up being a second, all of the trade compensation says, you know, he has to hit this many yards. He has to get a new contract. They have to make the playoffs. So there's a lot of these things that if those things ended up happening, then that second would be worth it.
Now, to go to the defensive side of the ball, you know, you mentioned earlier drafting for Devin Lloyd, and you took the first round pick on Trayvon Walker. Devin Lloyd's having a really good year. So is this like kind of like what you were hoping out of Devin Lloyd, and you're kind of a little bit disappointed from a year from Walker so far? Because he's not really putting up first overall pick numbers, you know?
Well, I'll tell you, you saying he's having a good year is crazy because Jags fans are not happy with Lloyd or Trayvon right now. Lloyd looks lost in a lot of games, and to the point where they have last week they started playing Chad Muma a lot more. Because Devin Lloyd has just like him and Trayvon in the preseason in the first couple games, we were like, all right, like this was worth it. The Jags did, exactly what they needed to do. Recently has not been that. Trayvon just can't. The problem and what I was worried about with Trayvon in the beginning was like no one knew where they were going to play him. Like the whole thing was like, hey, his ceiling is potentially really high, but the floor is kind of low, because we don't really know. There's a lot of work. He has to figure some stuff out. He's not one of those like ready to go type of guys. And also we don't know where exactly he plays because at Georgia, he was surrounded by every possible good player on the defense that you could have. And so they could kind of toss him in anywhere and it worked. The Jags don't have that, obviously. And most NFL defenses don't have like every position the top in the league, So they're trying to find what to do with Trayvon right now. And they're already starting to be like, okay, in this offseason, do we need to move him? Like, do we need to get his hands in the dirt? Like, do we have to try to figure something? Do we need to move him to an end? So they're trying to figure that out. They're also trying to figure Devin Lloyd out right now. But I think both are kind of disappointing, which is unfortunate because guys like Aiden Hutchinson have started playing really well. And that's the guy that I think Jacksonville for a long time is going to compare that. They're going to be looking at Aiden Hutchinson and being like, okay, what is he doing? Because we picked Trayvon over him. So until Trayvon passes or is doing whatever Aiden Hutchinson was doing, Jags fans probably won't be happy. But I think not very happy with either of them, honestly.
One thing I've noticed that I noticed this during the preseason, we're always told not to take too much stock in the preseason. Yet I feel like people take too much stock in the preseason. And
I know.
You brought up Trayvon Walker, and it was a perfect example. Now I remember where it came from because I was watching. I think the Jaguars were on TV one time. I happened to catch highlights, and I think Trayvon Walker had like 2 sacks in a preseason game, and the announcers were like literally going like, "Oh my God, this guy's going to be incredible! This guy's going to be incredible!" It's like, why do you think that? Do you sense that like with a lot now where people seem to be taking too much stock in the preseason when they probably should be tempering their expectations? Because like you said, he's not having a good season according to Jaguar fans, and they're getting frustrated with him. So what are your thoughts on that? Because like I said, like with the Jets, for example, all preseason it was about Chris Streveler, 4th string quarterback who was not on anybody's roster, who was leading a 4th string offense down the field to win a game in the 4th quarter. And when the Jets announced Mike White as a starter last week, as soon as I said to the comments, like, oh, how much you want to bet somebody's going to like complain about Mike White? And every comment was, this is ridiculous. Why isn't Chris Streveler starting? So I'm just curious, like, what are your thoughts on that? Do you think a lot more people are taking too much stock in the preseason these days?
Yeah, I think so. And I think, like you said, we try to go into it and say we're not. But it's hard not to get a little excited when you're seeing guys and you constantly tell yourself. So you're watching the games and you're like, okay, don't take too much into this because they're facing the backup defenses or they're facing the backup offense or like whatever. But at the same time, you're seeing guys get multiple sacks or you're seeing a quarterback throw 5 touchdowns and you're like, okay, like this is kind of fun though. Like, what if this is it? And you always have the few that slide in. Like the Bears have a guy right now who, since they got rid of Roquan, Jack Sanborn, he's from Wisconsin, and he went off in the preseason. Everyone was like super excited about Jack Sanborn, but obviously you have Roquan Smith, so we knew we wouldn't see much of him. And then when Roquan was traded, Sanborn's came in and has been just, like phenomenal since he's came in. I think he has like 40 tackles, 2 sacks, an interception that got called back, but it should have been an interception. A ton of tackles for a loss, 3 QB hits. Like he's just been nonstop. And he was also undrafted, which is kind of crazy too. But those guys slip through sometimes. So you always hope that that's the case. You always hope that this time when you're watching this preseason game, you're seeing that one guy that is keeping their job or going to make the starting roster, and then they're going to be that next corner or safety or whatever. The problem is, to me, what the preseason is really about is depth. Like that's when you find out how deep your defensive line is or how deep your secondary is. And there's a ton of injuries this year. So, and that's like all around, across the board in the league. So those are, to me, I try to focus it on that, but I think it's hard not to when you see someone go in and, like I said, if they're like going crazy against, even if it's for one drive, they're like, oh, he went 4 for 5 and 107 yards and a touchdown in one drive. Like, this guy's it. And you get excited. And then the season comes and you're like, that was not it. That was not it.
So I'll switch it over to the Bears because we know you're a Bears fan. You got your new podcast out. First of all, sorry for the whooping we gave you guys yesterday.
It's okay. We needed it, you guys. Like, I was honestly scared we were gonna win. I was like, if we win this and Trevor Siemian comes out and throws like 300 yards and 3 touchdowns, like, we're not going to hear the end of it from Bears Twitter and from national media being like, well, maybe Justin's not the guy. So I'm so glad it went the way it did. I'm so glad it went that way.
So like you mentioned, I'm sorry, like you just mentioned with Trevor Siemian coming in and, potentially playing good. Prior to the injury of Justin Fields, did you think Justin Fields was taking like a turn for the better and like living up to his draft pick from the year before?
Oh yeah. I mean, the first 4 weeks of the season were scary. I'm not going to say I got to the point where I was like, he's a bust, like he's done, but there was definitely starting to become some concern because it just wasn't, nothing was clicking. Like guys like Cole Kmet, who we thought was going to be like his right-hand man this season, that wasn't happening. The run game was like successful between David Montgomery and Khalil, but they weren't using Justin the way that we know Justin could be used. So we also were in panic mode about Luke Getsy. Like maybe he was good because of Aaron Rodgers and maybe he's not actually a good offensive coordinator. So there was a lot of like panic within those first 4 weeks. That shifted very quickly. Once it was actually the game. So we had like 2, I don't know why they give us all the primetime games. Like, we don't want them. Stop giving them to us. But then we had one game where it was a Thursday and then we didn't play again until that Monday or something like that. So we had an extra long, we had like 10 days off. And during that time, they said that they spent the whole time watching film on Lamar Jackson. And after that game, it's just been, Justin's made a world of difference. All of a sudden we're scoring 30 plus points for multiple games in a row. He obviously broke Michael Vick's record in the rushing game, which I know a lot of people are like, cool, you have a running back, blah, blah, blah. But the problem is our pass blocking, our O-line is the worst in the entire world at pass blocking. So like we have to run or he's getting sacked. So that's pretty much like the options. If he's not getting the ball out in like 2 seconds, he's getting hit. So of course he's going to run because he's fast and he can run a 4.4 and he can go. But we've also just started seeing him progressively like making better decisions, holding on to the ball. Sometimes he holds on to the ball too long. And that's one thing that I even remember from college. And that's something that they're definitely working on. Because when he does have time, I feel like he's almost in shock because he's so used to getting like pressured right away that when he has time, he's like, oh, like I can go through my progressions now and do this. But on the Bears podcast we actually talked to his high school coach, which obviously Justin and Trevor grew up 30 minutes down the road from each other. They're both from a town in Georgia. They both were kind of competitive through all that time. They did the Elite 8 or is that Elite 11, whatever it is.
Yeah,
they did that. He was like Mr. Georgia football. And like, so like Justin Fields has just been like the dude for so long. And we talked to his coach and his coach was like, I think it's silly that people say he can't throw. Like if they watched him at Ohio State, they know he was a pocket passer at Ohio State. Could he run? Yeah, but his game wasn't game planned around the run. The problem is that the Bears have to do that because they don't have the weapons for Justin Fields to really do much else. I'm hoping that changes. I'm hoping eventually Chase Claypool can be that guy. Now we just lost Darnell Mooney, so it's going to be even worse probably. It's progressively like everything's gotten better pretty much that you could ask for with what Justin has. I don't think a lot of people realized how little resources Ryan Poles and Eberflus had this offseason. They had $25 million going into free agency, no first round draft pick, and only 5 total picks. So Ryan Poles and Eberflus really had to work to even get what they could. And we pretty much had, I want to say it was almost 65% roster turnover. So there was a lot of guys that were at the end of the contracts and there was a lot of things to figure out. But Justin Fields has, I mean, you guys saw yesterday we could only score 10 points. And previous to that, we were averaging 38. So it's just, he's a difference maker.
No, absolutely. And like you mentioned, everyone saw it, like the passing in the pocket, that was his game when he was at Ohio State, and he was doing that here. But now it looks like he's like unlocked his other talent because, like you mentioned, minimal resources, so you had to figure out something else for him to do.
Yeah.
And we knew, like you mentioned, we knew he could run the ball. It's just that wasn't his game. But now it's like you opened up the playbook a little bit more, add a couple plays here and there, and he's a stud, an
Yeah.
absolute stud.
I was really I was like really hoping it was going to be like a Zach Wilson versus Justin Fields, because it was like the final. He doesn't play Trevor this year, but he played like every other 2021 quarterback and had beat them all. And I was like, we needed that final one to just be like, we got it. But as soon as he was like that game, I don't know if you guys were watching the game where he was hurt, but he was like holding both hamstrings, holding his shoulder. He was like about to cry. I was like, okay, this isn't good.
With the Bears too, that was another team. They traded Roquan Smith, they traded Robert Quinn, and for draft picks, and you kind of figured at that point they were just going to blow it up because they weren't going to be a very good team anyway. And then they made a surprising move for Chase Claypool, where they wound up trading. Was it a second round or a third round pick? I can't really
remember. It was a second.
It was a second. How do they view Chase Claypool as a big part of this team's future, or do you think that this offseason coming up, they're going to be more aggressive, making sure they have as much as they can to protect Justin Fields with either the offensive line, obviously rebuilding the offensive line, because like you said, he's just getting sacked like crazy.
Yeah.
Or possibly adding more receivers on the outside.
Yeah, I'm honestly going to be really interested. I think that I do think they're trying to make Claypool a guy. I watched, being a Notre Dame fan, watched Claypool a ton and was a huge Claypool fan. I don't think Pittsburgh was using Claypool the right way. Claypool's a full-on contested catches, 50-50 deep ball type of guy, and the Steelers just didn't put him in that position a lot, probably because they had so many other guys. And then go and get George Pickens this year too, so that like reduced it even more. But I think that they're trying. He got kind of thrown into an offense where he's learning very quickly, and then the quarterback gets hurt, so then they're adjusting the offense again to Trevor Siemian. So he hasn't had much time to like acclimate to what this offense is right now. But you saw some the other day, a couple really big catches where Sauce like tackled him before the ball was even in his hand. But I was like, that's what we need. Like, that is what Chase Claypool is on the field for. So I'm hoping they start figuring that out. But during the offseason, I more so think, just because I do like Darnell Mooney, I guess it depends what that injury looks like. Because if Darnell's looks like it's going to go into next season and potentially affect that, then that would definitely alter their plans for wide receiver. But if it looks like Darnell will be ready to go and you have Chase Claypool, I could see them maybe trying to go get just like a veteran guy. I would love a T. Higgins or something like that. And I don't think he's free. I think he's a 2024 free agent. But the Bears have a lot of money this year. So I'm more expecting something like that, like them going after a big trade guy that is a free agent the next year, or getting just like a veteran, not saying this guy particularly, but a Juju type guy, like someone who can come in and kind of like maybe not make splash plays all the time, but take some leadership into the, like in the locker room, and really not sure they should put Chase and Juju. That's why I said don't put them back together, because it's probably not good. But somebody like that, just someone that has been in the league a little while, because the Bears are very young, and you can just tell there's just not that like guy that can kind of take reins over everybody. They went and got Byron Pringle, and I think he made his like third catch of the season on Sunday. So like that just hasn't really panned out to what they wanted. Equinemius from Green Bay hasn't panned out to how they wanted. So I definitely think they'll make some sort of move in wide receiver, but I really do depend I think that'll depend on how much they see from Chase this last whatever 5-6 wherever we are 6 weeks, and then obviously Mooney's injury. But I think they're going to hit heavy on defensive line and offensive line. Our D line is terrible. They got one sack on Mike White, and that was our defensive line's first sack since week 6. Like, our line is bad. And it's just two of the guys are very young, and there's no veteran really leadership on there either. And the offensive line has allowed 42 sacks. So we have to fix that. I think they are going to go heavy on that. And then hopefully, like, in their mind, protection with Justin is going to open up possibilities with other wide receivers,
So for the Bears, who do you think's been like a surprise, good or bad? this year for the Bears? Like you thought like, oh, this guy was going to be good and he's been bad, or this guy's been like a no name and he was like, whoa, I can't believe he came out of nowhere.
Yeah, so I mentioned the one earlier. Jack Sanborn was one that really surprised me, but another one, honestly, is Tevin Jenkins. Tevin, obviously, we drafted him not this last year, but the year before. He is an offensive lineman. We drafted him as like a left tackle. Technically, he broke his back last offseason and missed the majority of the season. And so when he came back in, he played here and there. We saw some glimpses, but weren't really sure. And then when the season started this last year, there was drama. I don't know how much people hear about other teams' offensive line drama, but he didn't want to play guard and they didn't have a place for him at tackle because the Bears drafted a left tackle in Braxton Jones. And then they had Larry Borum that was playing right tackle. So they were like, well, you're not playing tackle. Like, you're going to have to get moved to guard. And I guess that's kind of like tackles don't like playing guard. I guess it's like they just don't like that. So there was a little bit of drama, and there was rumors that Tevin was going to get traded, which I was really upset about because I was super excited about Tevin Jenkins. But they said, okay, moved him to right guard. He's been by far our best offensive lineman, and he has been probably the one piece of the line that has held up and has done well consistently throughout the season. I want to say on his side, he's allowed 2. So 2 of the 42 sacks, that's all on Tevin. And this is a guy that's only played not even a full season of football yet, and coming out of Oklahoma State. So he's definitely one that has majorly surprised me on the offensive line. There's a lot of other issues on that offensive line. Another one that I was actually really excited about in the preseason, I just wasn't sure, is our safety, Jaquan Brisker, who unfortunately didn't get to play last week. He got hurt. But he's been so much fun, and it allowed Eddie Jackson to also move back to his natural position. So Eddie Jackson's been back, which he also got hurt on Sunday. But Jaquan has been so much fun, and he's just one of those guys. He has 2 sacks on a quarterback. He has his interception already, tons of tackles. He's just one of those safeties that are all over the field, and I feel like you don't see that a whole lot in the NFL. Like, a lot of those safeties kind of do their thing, especially depending with your strong or your free safety. That obviously affects it. But those 3, Jack Sanborn, Jaquan Brisker, and Tevin Jenkins, I would say, have been really fun to watch.
This is a question that's not about the Bears or the Jaguars. This is just basically a football question because, yesterday, watching Russell Wilson get into it with the defensive lineman because the Broncos were so bad, Kyler Murray's post-game comments after their game where he basically just said they were screwed, but he used a more colorful word.
Yeah.
And then I'm kind of tying this into the potential contract that Lamar Jackson is going to eventually get, whether it be the Ravens or – you have 2 quarterbacks that each signed a contract for close to $250 million. You have Deshaun Watson, who signed a contract. He's probably going to make his debut on Sunday against the Texans. With everything going on with how bad the Arizona Cardinals are, with how disappointing the Denver Broncos are, when you sign for that big of money, how much of an accountability factor is it on the quarterback to make the team good compared to the coaching getting them prepared? Because when the Broncos hired Nathaniel Hackett, my theory was it was just to get Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah.
It was the only thing that made sense. When they didn't land Aaron Rodgers, they panicked and they went for Russell Wilson, which, again, at the time, it wasn't really a panic move. But then when you realized what he got money-wise, then you said, okay, well, this is big. And, this could be bad if Denver's terrible. But how much of this is really on the quarterback? Because I always feel like quarterbacks tend to get a pass and we immediately blame the coaching.
Mm-hmm.
We need to blame the organization because they didn't do this right. But guys like Kyler Murray always seem to get a pass, even though I kind of think Kyler Murray is very overrated. In your opinion, how much of an accountability factor should be on a quarterback, especially for the amount of money they make into making the offense around them better compared to the coaching?
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's huge and you guys are in the situation right now of a quarterback taking accountability of what's their fault and what's not their fault. But I think that, to begin, so glad the Bears did not give up 6 draft picks and $250 million for Russell Wilson, because we were trying like that before before the Justin Fields draft. We were about to, and I want to say it was literally
I thought that was a lot.
4 first rounders. Like, oh God, that would have been terrible. But that's wild when you go back to that draft in general, because Denver, I truly think they thought they were getting Aaron Rodgers. I really do, because they passed on all the quarterbacks. They passed on Justin Fields. I thought they were about to take Justin Fields, and when they passed, I was like, they think they're getting Aaron Rodgers this offseason, and that's hilarious to me. But it was obviously worked out for us and did not work out for them, because they had to go get Russell Wilson the next year and give him a butt ton of money. I think that my personal theory is I think that people don't give Pete Carroll enough credit for what he does with quarterbacks. Like, when you go back to even college, he had 2 Heisman candidate quarterbacks. Look what he's doing with Geno Smith this year. Like, I think a lot of it, and not saying that Russell Wilson wasn't a good quarterback, but I think that connection with Pete Carroll and Russell Wilson kind of maybe amplified who Russell Wilson was at times. And Nathaniel Hackett's not that guy. Like, he's just not. I almost feel bad for Denver, but not really, because I don't have any like ties to them whatsoever. But watching that video of that defensive lineman screaming at Russell Wilson, I was like, oh my gosh, they're in a bad situation right now. And gave away so much stuff. But I think that at some point, it's not just Russell Wilson. There's obviously, the defense is very great, but there's obviously other things that aren't clicking, and whether that be because the coaching isn't clicking or whether that be all Russell Wilson, but he's definitely not performing to what he's getting paid. And should that at some point in the NFL be, that's why you don't give a guy guaranteed money like that. I just think that as a team, you have to be a little smarter than that. And there should be incentives. I think a lot of contracts should be more incentive based personally, because you don't know what these guys are going to do from team to team with different players. He went from Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalf. Of course, there's going to be like a little bit of a fall off there. And I like Jerry Jeudy. I like Cortland Sutton, but that's not Lockett and DK, you know? But I think that at some point, I think contracts will start to shift, because right now you're seeing guys like even Derek Carr's contract where they're like probably looking at that now like, uh-oh. But then now Lamar's wanting to get paid, and these coaches are hesitant because guys like Russell Wilson happen.
But do you think also at the same time, like you were watching the Jaguar game yesterday against the Ravens, do you think Lamar Jackson is a $250 million quarterback?
No, I don't. I'll be honest, like I'm not the biggest Lamar fan. I kind of like in the preseason, like we always do our preseason picks of like, you know, who we think will win each division, and we kind of go through the wild card teams. And every year as I get to that division, I'm like, I just don't believe that Lamar Jackson can do it in the long run. Like, not saying he can't win games here and there, but they've blown 3 double-digit games already this season. And so it's like, to me, when you have like pieces around you, you should be able to win some of those games. You should be able to beat Jacksonville. Like, you just should. Jacksonville's not in the place right now that a guy like Lamar Jackson asking for that much money shouldn't be able to beat you, and you are. So I do not think they should pay him that, but I don't know what they would do otherwise.
Let's say we got another comment from Mike Laws, local Jet fan as well. What's going on with Folu Fadakasi? We miss him.
Oh, we love Foley down here, honestly. He's had moments. He was dealing with injuries for a little bit, which hurt a lot, because the Jags run defense was like lights out for the first 3-4 weeks, and then Fadakasi got hurt and it dropped off a lot. He came back recently and has been playing like it. That defense is like kind of figuring it out, at least up in the defensive front again. But there's a few. Foley Fadakasi and Foye Oluokun are 2 guys that the Jags probably made the best choices they could have in the offseason. And it's guys that honestly you didn't know were as good as they were before. You know, like when you go and look at his numbers, you're like, oh, like why didn't people talk about him more? But he's been really fun to watch. And when he's in the game, it makes the difference on the line for sure.
Oh no, without a doubt. Like as Jet fans, you know, we had him. We knew we knew his capabilities, and it's like that was one guy we didn't want to like see leave, but it's like we understood why he left.
Yeah.
And it was like you guys, like you no one would ever know unless you are a Jets fan, like on how actually good he really is.
Yeah.
And I have, you know, my last question. This is going to be for me. I was on your Twitter, you know, I gotta know for your fantasy football team, what happened to your team that you had to start Ty Johnson and Amir Abdullah?
Oh my God. So it's just been that team. First of all, it's my work league and it's 16 teams, which is hard. So hard because like we got through like 3 rounds of the draft, and I was like, oh, okay, this is hard. Everybody's gone, and you're really looking in the trenches already, and you're only in like round 4 of their draft. But so I had, which now I could have technically kept. I had Melvin Gordon. Melvin Gordon obviously got cut and kept fumbling. So I was like, this isn't good. I had Khalil Herbert. Khalil Herbert went on IR. I had, who was the other guy? Somebody else just recently went on IR, and I can't think of who it was. So I had 2 guys hit IR. Melvin Gordon got cut. I think, yeah. And so I was like, everything's going wrong at this point. I don't have anybody left to even do anything. I want to say Rashad Penny. I had him, and then he also got cut or hurt. I don't remember. So I, that day of, was like, all right, well, let me just go see who's available. And we also, they cut off trades after a certain point. Like you can't make any trades after like week 9 or 10 or something. That was one of the rules. So I went in, I was like, let me see who's the best available, like running backs. And literally the best one was Amir Abdullah, which was projected like 5.6. And I was like, oh God, this is going to be so bad. But I knew the Bears defense is so bad. So I was like, I honestly didn't know a whole lot about Ty. I was like, but he's going to have something because the Bears defense is terrible. So I picked up him, and then I was like, the next best one was Amir. So I just did it. But they ended up getting me like almost combined 30. So I was like, okay, I'll take it. But it's that one's hurt. That one's hurting. And I dropped Melvin, and now he got picked back up. And I was like, I don't know why I didn't just like keep him on a bench spot just in case, but whatever.
All I remember this year was like probably the worst fantasy. I get so into doing the draft, and then week 1 comes, and then one of my best players gets hurt, and then I just like say, like it only this year I had Dak Prescott got hurt week 1. I think on like the last drive of the game too, like as they were like losing for 5 weeks. My number 1 overall pick was Jonathan Taylor. Jonathan Taylor missed 4 weeks with like an ankle, then missed another 2. And now, like, I was so looking and going into this week, I'm pretty much out of it.
Yeah.
But my running backs this week, and I was like, okay, if I'm going to do well this week, it's going to be my running backs. I have Jonathan Taylor, Damian Pierce, and Travis Etienne.
Yeah.
And I said, and I hadn't really checked my fantasy stuff because I have a side job working hockey games. So when I finally looked at my thing, I'm like, how the hell did Travis Etienne only get 3 yards? And he got me 0 points.
Oh gosh.
Damian Pierce got 8 yards, got me 0 points. And I'm like,
oh yeah.
And then,
because it was before you saw he was injured.
And then I was like, oh, okay, great. And then I'm like, all right, I have Alan Lazard going tonight. You know, he's been pretty good with Rodgers. And then through 3 quarters, Alan Lazard had no points.
Yeah.
I was like, I'm done. Like I'm retired. I'm just gonna do FanDuel, and like I know that FanDuel, there's no way they're giving away that kind of money every single week. So I know that the employees are probably involved in it in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah.
I get so excited for the draft, and then week 1.
You're like done.
Injury, and that's it. Now it's on to 2024.
Yeah, I've been struck with injuries a ton this season. I've had a few guys who have like saved me here and there that have surprisingly done better. Like Justin Fields, obviously. Like he was my backup. I got like Josh Allen in 2, and then Justin Herbert in 1, and I was like, whatever, I'm gonna go get my guy Justin. And then after the 1 week where he had like 45, I was like, maybe I should just start Justin Fields for a little while. Amon-Ra has been crushing it for me, aside from when he was a little banged up. But there's a lot of guys that just will like randomly go off 1 week and then not do anything for like 2 weeks. And then you'll see I'm like, Devontae Adams, I never know if he's going to get me 6 or 35. And I'm like, all right, we've got to figure something out. I need at least 20. Like.
And this year I was hoping, because I drafted A.J. Brown, and he's been kind of like, he's been like mediocre. I don't think he's been as elite as I wanted him to be. Kyle Pitts was a complete bust. I mean, like he kind of crushed my team altogether. Gabe Davis was kind of a bust. I mean, like it's been a long and I had an opportunity to pick up Justin Fields, and it was still a little bit of the unknown. It was right after he did really well against the Patriots, and I was like, I could pick him up for nothing right now, and I didn't. I needed a quarterback, and I wound up picking up Cousins.
Oh yeah.
Cousins wasn't bad, but he wasn't Justin Fields. Like that's pretty much what it was. So I was like, and then over the summer, I'm like, I don't know if I look for as it gets to training camp. I'm like, all right, I'm going to do fantasy, and by week 2, I regret the decision.
No, that's what I do every year. I'm like, why do I have 4 leagues? Like this is just depressing by week. I'm like, week whatever we're in now, 13, and half my team. I look at my bench and I'm really like hurt, out, doubtful, IR, projected 7, and I'm like, all right, this is not going to be fun.
Taylor, this was awesome as always. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Yeah, thank you guys.
Love talking football with you, and I just wish we could have some fun at Urban Meyer's expense, but unfortunately we can't. But thank you again, always. Best of luck with the podcast, with the podcast and everything. And who knows, maybe next year the Jags will be a playoff team with the way the NFC South, the AFC South is going right now. It's such a weak division, and even Tennessee, I think, it's a soft team. This next year could definitely be the Jaguars' year.
Yeah, I mean, I think the Jags definitely have the best quarterback in the AFC South. So, and that's at least for a while. So that's fun, and it's the first time that we could say that in a long time.
All right, well, take care of yourself, and we'd love to have you on again in the near future. All right.
All right. Thanks, guys. Bye.
Take care, Taylor. That was the one and only Taylor Dahl. She is the co-host of the Helmets and Heels show on the 1010XL 92.5 FM in Jacksonville. And she's also the host of the Making Monsters podcast on the Windy City Gridiron for SB Nation. She's one of our personal favorites, and we always look forward to having her on the show. So we'll have Jake Asman on in about 15 minutes. Yeah, I can't do fantasy anymore, man. I think I'm going to retire.
Bro, I can't even talk about fantasy. Like, I'm in 4 leagues this year. My main league, my $200 league, I'm 0-11.
Yeah, like, here's the funny thing, right? So, first of all, one thing I learned is I can't do leagues with a partner. Okay? Yeah. So, I got back into a league with some friends of mine from high school. And my friend Dave, who's a good friend of mine, one of my best friends, he lives in China. He lives in Taiwan. So, he doesn't really it's hard for him to watch football because the 1:00 games here start at 1 a.m. the following morning there, because they're 12 hours ahead. So he asked me, he's like, do you want to be back in the league this year? We can partner and everything. And I was like, yeah, sure. It was kind of cool, reconnecting with friends I hadn't really talked to in years and stuff. But we just have differing philosophies. And it drives me crazy because I want to pick up certain guys, but I can't because it's 1:00 in Taiwan and I can't talk to him.
Right.
And everything. And it was like I was so into doing it. And then, so the funny thing about this year was, and we thought we had a good team because we had Dak Prescott, we had AJ Brown, and the funny thing was I actually wanted to draft Josh Allen. And he wasn't really crazy about it because he doesn't value quarterbacks the way I do. Like I value
right.
My thing is I want the best guy at every position. I don't want to take a chance. I don't want to take any risks. I'm not big into the potential factor, and I think that's what hurt us this year.
Mm-hmm.
So we thought we had a pretty good team on paper. We had AJ Brown, we had Travis Etienne, we had Gabe Davis, we had Jonathan Taylor, we had Damian Pierce, and everything. We start out, we're 0-5, right? And we had some unbelievably shitty weeks too. It was embarrassing. And then we started losing guys to injury. We lost Dak Prescott to an injury. We lost Jonathan Taylor to an injury. And it was just driving me crazy that we were losing these guys to injury. We picked up Nyheim Hines when Jonathan Taylor got hurt.
Right.
And 2 plays into the game, he gets a concussion, gets knocked out of the game. So we had completely lost a running back for that spot. And that was a Thursday night game too. Right. So my friend gives up and I'm like, okay, I'm taking over the team then. And I'm going to do what I do.
Right.
I take over the team. I just start randomly picking up players. I start dropping guys. I start figuring things out. I try to see if I can gauge people into trades. But, all people ever want to do is they just want to fucking fleece you, on a trade. They never want to offer anything good. So I wind up winning 3 in a row, right? So now I'm 3-5, and I'm all right. I'm feeling good now. Things are starting to get better. I'm starting to kind of figure out what I want to do. But it's more because I want to run my own team. And again, I had a golden opportunity to pick up Justin Fields. Golden, because we have a waiver system. Basically, you put in a bid.
Right.
And the day of, whoever has the higher bid gets the player.
Right.
Once the waiver wire is over, you can pick up whoever you want. You can pick up a free agent, whoever you want. Doesn't matter. Right. And I was like, Justin Fields was sitting out there the whole time, and I'm like, should I pick him up? I was like, I don't know how. I feel like this New England thing is a little fluky, and I didn't pick him up, right? Mm-hmm. And then that was the week he went off for he had 60 fantasy points, basically. That was the day he rushed for 100 yards, and he threw for 3 touchdowns. He's had a monster game. And I said, well, there goes that. So it's I guess I can't pick him up now. And I said, if I had picked up Justin Fields, I would probably I'd be in the playoff hunt right now.
Well, so you want to hear how bad my year has been? Right at my first 2 picks in my league this year, I had the first overall pick. I picked Jonathan Taylor. Bam, no brainer, obviously, right? Wrong, apparently, because he's having a terrible year. And then my second overall pick was Saquon. But what goes through Klim's magic mind right after, the draft happens? It's someone offers me a trade for Saquon, and it was Javonte Williams. Sure, I'll do that trade. So I traded Saquon Barkley away for Javonte Williams. And I think we could all figure out how the fuck that turned out.
Well, okay. In your defense, Javonte Williams isn't a bad player. He just got hurt. You can't really do anything about that. Injuries, you can't really go crazy. But it's one of those, it can only happen to me moments.
Yeah, no, that's been me the past few years. I drafted Christian McCaffrey last year, gets injured. Year before that, I take who was it? I take Saquon. I took Saquon the year before that. He gets injured. It's been nonstop me drafting the first few picks in our fantasy draft, and these players getting injured. Oh, I drafted Derrick Henry a year or so ago. He got injured. I'm like, you gotta be freaking kidding me. I have the worst fucking luck in my fantasy football league. My friend said I got cursed because my one friend in the league, he was like, yo, Klim, your team is ass cheeks. And since that point, I haven't been out of the bottom 2 in my fantasy football league.
And the thing is, I got mad, and the thing is, I argued with my friend Dave, and I go, Dave, we have to stop drafting potential. That doesn't do anything because that's good for 2 weeks, and then the guy goes into a lull. Look at a guy like Gabe Davis. I thought Gabe Davis was going to be a lot better. I didn't think he was going to be Diggs good. I didn't think he was going to be as good as Stephon Diggs, but I thought he was going to be better than what he is. And he killed me in the friggin' Lion game, on Thursday.
Right.
And I was like, see, it's I can't do this. It's driving me crazy. I have a rule now. I made a rule for myself. Number 1, I don't know if I could start anybody in a Thursday night game because I don't like starting guys in Thursday night games. Number 2, somehow, some way, I have to get a guy on Monday Night Football because I like having that, borderline going to the next day. So I started doing this because we draft individual defensive players, right? Mm-hmm. So I started picking up defensive players that play on Monday night. And I was just so I had a couple of guys on Monday night, But it was I was up. I forgot what it was. I was winning a game by 40 points, right? And then at the last minute, Zach Ertz caught a touchdown against the kid I was playing, and it cut my lead almost in half. And I was like, shit. And then all of a sudden I'm like, okay, if I had AJ Brown, I had Eagles D. It was the game against the Commanders. Mm-hmm. And the guy I was facing had Terry McLaurin, Miles Sanders, and someone else. I said, all right, AJ Brown could just get me some big time points here. I was like, even if he doesn't have to put up 40 points, but if he can get me in the 15 to 20, I think I got a good shot to win and everything. Bro, AJ Brown had 1 catch for 7 yards in the whole freaking game. And I said, honestly, I took my fist. I was so mad. I took my fist and I punched the marble island I have in the middle of my kitchen. And I hurt my hand. And I didn't really care because I was so beside myself. I was so pissed about it. Right.
And fantasy football, it just drives me nuts. It really does. Because every year I'm like, yep, this is the year. I draft a good team. Nope. Terrible.
Yeah. I told my friend Dave, I said, Dave, listen, man. I said, you and I are boys. I said, but I think it's safe to say, I was like, I kind of want to do it. If I'm going to be back in the league next year, I'm going to do a team by myself. I was like, I'm not trying to be a dick. Please don't take it personally.
Right.
I said, I just think our partnership has run its course. It's kind of how I would describe it. He wasn't mad. I think he kind of knew too. I was like, we just have 2 different philosophies. I'm like, we just have, he's very big into the running back philosophy and I'm not. I am a best player available guy. if you gave me a second round pick, I would have drafted Josh Allen, and I would have had 40 points a week, and I would have definitely won more games because I know Josh Allen would have carried my team. Like I'm just very big into best player available, and that's it. And that's how I deal. Like that's how I've always dealt with my fantasy drafts. Like I don't do this potential. I don't do this target shit. I'm not big into analytics, and I'm just like, okay, Mahomes is available. I'll take Mahomes. I was like, because I need, because we were like scraping for a quarterback, and he was like, and Dak wasn't a bad pick. I'm not saying Dak was a bad pick. It was just like the fact that I lost him for 6 weeks just really killed me because then I was stuck starting Stafford, and Stafford was terrible. Then I was trying to start, Cousins, and the 1 week I start Cousins, he wasn't very good. I was getting so tired of trying to figure out who was a good quarterback, and that's what I don't want. Like I want to know that if I have Josh Allen as my starting quarterback, Josh Allen is starting for me on Sunday. Like I don't have to think about it. I don't have to worry about it. This is my quarterback for Sunday.
No, I'm with you because I changed up my whole draft strategy this year because I usually like the same way. Like I'll overdraft a quarterback like a Patrick Mahomes or like a Josh Allen because I know they'll get me 30 points a week and I'll be fine. But this year I was like, you know what? I got to go running backs. Then I'll go wide receivers. Then I'll wait on a quarterback. And the quarterback I ended up drafting was Matt Stafford, who fucking sucks. Luckily, I ended up picking up. I got Geno Smith in the free agency, who's obviously been pretty good this year in fantasy wise. But I was just like, I don't know what I have to do. I got to like talk to like a fantasy shaman or guru or something because my team I can't deal with this sucker.
Well, at the end of the day, fantasy is all luck. Like to be honest, I would have drafted Cooper Kupp. Because I think outside the box. I don't normally think like Jonathan Taylor was the safe play at number 1. We got the number 1 pick this year, and we picked Jonathan Taylor. And I was like, man, I really want Cooper Kupp. Like I kind of wanted Cooper Kupp like a little bit more. But, my friend Dave was like, no, we should take Taylor, and I was like, all right, fine, whatever. Running backs don't excite me. Running backs, I never understood the fascination, like why it was so big in the running backs. I didn't get it. Was it just because of catches? Was it because of, yards rushing and receiving yards and catches? I just couldn't get my head around it. I'm like, I could get just as many points with Cooper Kupp or Justin Jefferson, even though I probably would not have drafted Justin Jefferson number 1 overall. But I was like, if I'm doing a fantasy league next year, I said, I'm going outside the box. Like I'm going to pick who I want to pick. I don't give a fuck what this magazine say. Like, because it just drove me crazy. And then we wound up taking like the second round pick was AJ Brown, and AJ Brown was not that great. Then, we really, really rolled the dice in the third round with Kyle Pitts, and that was a disaster.
Oh, I drafted Kyle Pitts too. He fucking sucks.
And I was so expecting him to be like a big time receiver, and I was so pissed that he wasn't.
That's what I went. I knew it. I had no interest in drafting Kyle Pitts this year. And then, but the more I kept hearing it, and the more like people kept talking in my ear about Kyle Pitts, I was like, you know what? Maybe I'm wrong. If everyone else is talking about it, maybe I'm wrong. I haven't had a good fantasy history, so maybe it's me. And he fucking sucks. I knew I shouldn't have overdrafted Kyle Pitts.
But Klim, I used to have a cardinal rule, like when I did drafts, I never drafted a tight end before like the 5th round, unless it was like Travis Kelce. Right. I just could not get my head around drafting a tight end. And for some reason I thought that because the Falcons had no receivers outside of Drake London, I was like, okay, maybe Kyle Pitts' life should be better than we thought because he's, Mariota's got to throw to somebody, and a guy like Mariota may lean on, throwing to the tight ends more often. And man, was I wrong.
I was gonna say, what did it for me was when the Falcons played the Jets during the preseason, and Kyle Pitts lit us up, and I was like, this is it. This is the guy right here.
Yeah, and I was like, it was driving me crazy, and it was like. You don't understand. I was beside myself. I was like furious. And then after a while, I just kind of gave up. I was like, we have no chance to come back. So we're pretty much done. I'm probably going to lose out the season. Now because I'm going to finish like 3-10.
At least you have wins. I have no wins right now. Everyone in my group chat is clowning me because they're like, Klim, are you going to win any games this year? I'm like, I don't know. I'm trying. Okay. I keep and that's
one of the things too, is like my friend Dave's like, well, if you did anything, you helped us avoid a winless season. I go, not that if you listen to me, things would be better because I don't really know that. But it was just obvious that I saw things that other people didn't. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to take a chance on this guy. We've had this guy sitting on our bench for weeks. He hasn't done squat. I'm dropping him.
Yeah.
Like, why am I saving this guy? I don't care if he's the backup running back for the Bears. It doesn't mean anything to me. I was like, I need guys who can score now. Like, I can't wait like forever. I mean, the one thing I did do just to be a dick, though, I decided to pick up Deshaun Watson. I have no intention of starting him, by the way. Like, I'll probably stick with – I might start Deshaun Watson on Sunday. But I was like, I did it so no other team could pick him up.
Right.
I was like, and I picked him up. I was like, you know what? I'm going to pick him up right now, and I'm just going to stash him, and whatever happens, happens. And I did the same thing with Jameson Williams. Because I was like, you know what? I'll pick up Jameson Williams now. I'll pay like $1, and then because no one's good. It's like the Price is Right. You know, like you just bet $1 for like a toaster oven or something. Right. And then I'm like, I'll just stash him on IR, and if he comes off IR, I'll start him. You know, obviously he's not going to come off IR in time for me to get to the playoffs, but I'm basically at the point right now where I'm like, look, I have to be my own team. If I don't, it's going to kill me. Like, I can't listen to anybody else. I'm going to like run amok and kill somebody.
No, I 100% agree with you. 100%.
Live by the sword, die by the sword type of thing. That's kind of like how I live. That's kind of how I look at it. But I know that like next year, if I have a pick and I know I see Josh Allen there, I'm going to draft him. Because I want him. I just want him. You know, if Pat Mahomes is there, I'm going to draft him. Because it was like, and every time we were like, oh yeah, maybe this is the round we'll take Jalen Hurts. And I'm like, let's just take Jalen Hurts now and let's not wait. If you want Jalen Hurts, let's just get him. No, I think he'll be available. And then what happens? Like one pick before us, fucking guy takes Jalen Hurts. And it like throws off our entire draft strategy. So I was like, from now on, like I said, like, because that's the only way you can do fantasy football. You can't do it like, you can't think. And the thing is, our drafts, 1 minute rounds. Like, you have to have your pick, like, ready to go, man. Like, you can't even think twice. You have to have your pick ready to go.
Yeah, mine's, I think, 1.5 minutes. And, like, after a certain while, we changed it to a minute because at that point, you're just picking bench players. But it's just like, I don't know. I don't know what I have to do next year. I talked to a shaman, guru, pray to the fantasy god, something. I don't know. Because I can't keep being in last place every fucking year. It's driving me crazy.
Yeah. No, it's just, and like I said, like me and my friend are just like, I'm like, dude, we can't be partners anymore. I was like,
especially if he lives in China, like that doesn't help.
Like he got me involved in it again because we were just like, he's not he's a bigger baseball fan than football fan.
Right.
And, he kind of does the league just to kind of keep in touch with everybody. That's pretty much his primary motive in doing the league. But it was like, I'm like, all right, man, let's do it. And I used to hate, like, when I used to throw out ideas and then he would kind of shoot them down to the point where I was like, well, who's running the team here? Like, am I just here as, like, a warm body to do the draft? Right? And I was like, well, why don't we do this? Like, let's try something different. I'm like, he's like, no, I don't know about it. And I'm like, you brought me on to this team because you wanted, you're telling me you don't really follow football as much and everything. And now you're acting like you're like the GM. I mean, so then why'd you bring me into the league? Like, I don't get it. And he said, just drive me crazy. And like, again, then the fucking injuries drove me nuts. They still drive me nuts. Like with Dak Prescott got hurt, I think, on the last drive of the game. That finger injury or that whatever it was, he got hurt in the last drive of the game. And I was beside myself. I was like, see what I mean? I was like, so I can't do this shit after a while. Like, it just, I always get some brutal freaking injury right off the bat. And it's always like this nagging injury that just limits the player.
I just messaged Jake. He said he's having just a little bit of trouble joining the stream, so he should be here any minute.
Okay. By the way, dude, did you watch Survivor Series?
I did.
Awesome.
It was a good show.
The only thing I didn't like, well, Rousey match was terrible. But
look, I'm a big Ronda fan.
Rousey,
I think her time in WWE is running.
Her head's not in it. Her head's not in it anymore.
Yeah.
But like Rousey, and I didn't like the fact they gave the belt to Austin Theory. I don't think he's ready. He's not ready, man. I'm telling you, he's not ready. They're going to try to make him the next Orton.
I have no problems with him with the belt. What I have a real problem with is that he used it to cash in on Seth Rollins, and not only that, it was a failed cash-in attempt. Like, what the hell? Like, the this thing has been such a shit show. I mean, I will get into WWE later because the legend himself is finally here.
Ah, there he is.
What's up, fellas?
Joining us right now on the Moffett on the Mic show. He's one of our personal favorites, host of the Jake Asman show on YouTube. He is pretty much one of the best in the business with Jets content. He's also on the Wheelhouse and ESPN Houston. The one and only Jake Asman. What's going on, man?
Craig, Chris, what's up, guys? It's been a while. I mean, what's going on?
Yeah, you're kind of big time now. I've been watching your Wheelhouse stuff on YouTube.
I appreciate you watching that. I mean, someone's tuning into the show. That's good to know.
I will say, actually, I love you guys did a segment on Lovie Smith getting into it with that Houston reporter. I thought then the guy's like a pot stirrer, I think, for the Texans, like against the Texans or something like that. So I thought that was actually a really cool segment and everything. But congratulations on all your success, man. It's pretty awesome. But the one rant I will always remember from you has nothing to do with sports. It was when you went on a rant on our show about how Rose from Titanic is the worst human being possible.
Absolutely huge piece of shit.
I stand by it, Craig. I still feel that way to this day.
And the only reason why I remember that so much is because the other night Titanic happened to be on, and it was the part where Jack is clinging on by a thread with the hypothermia kicking in, and she's just like, "Yeah, I'm just gonna let you die." It's like, I don't love you that much.
I mean, it really is a war crime, and she got away with it. It's terrible.
But Jake, thanks for hanging out with us. Hope you had a nice holiday.
Likewise, guys. It's been a while. I mean, there's some great things to talk about right now. The Jets are the greatest quarterback of all time. It seems to be the talk today.
Yeah, Magic Mike.
That's right.
Yeah. So let's dive right in with the whole Mike White thing. So listen, he played great yesterday. Last year I remember the Cincinnati game. Fans talk about that game ad nauseum, but get mad when everybody talks about Zach Wilson playing well against Pittsburgh. And then we follow up the Buffalo game that year with it last year, which was a huge stinker. So for you, with Mike White playing so well this first game, what is like your threshold? Like, what do you think is kind of like when you start to believe like in Mike White? Like, what's the bar, I think, for Mike White before you finally accept him as like, yeah, this guy is the big deal at quarterback right now for the Jets?
It's a great question because like I don't know if there's like, all right, after this many games, I'm going to be sold. It's probably going to be like, honestly, like what the old Supreme Court definition of porn is. Like, I don't know how to describe it, but I know it when I see it. Like, I kind of feel like that's where we're going to head here with Mike White. I mean, look, he obviously has to put together multiple games in a row where he looks competent, he plays well. He can't have a great game and then go out there this Sunday against Minnesota and throw 4 picks, right? So, but he's earning the opportunity here, I would say, to prove himself, right? See what he can do. I mean, if the Jets make the playoffs and he's playing good football, I think he's earned the opportunity to come back next year and be the guy. I don't care about Zach Wilson's draft status. Like, I want to win. And I think every Jet fan that hears the sound of my voice, and you guys as well, like, we want to see this team make the playoffs. So we don't care where the quarterback comes from, just win. And I think Mike White has at least earned the opportunity here, certainly over these next 2 games against Minnesota and Buffalo, where if he plays well and they split or they're able to, win one of these games here, like, I just feel like he's kind of earned the stretch run here, and then the schedule softens up with Detroit and Jacksonville. So, I mean, I'm cautiously optimistic. I don't think he's Brady. I don't think he's, this can't-miss guy that they have discovered, but I do think he's shown enough here where you're at least intrigued to let it play out and kind of evaluate on a week-by-week basis.
But do you see him, hold on a second, do you see him as the starter for the rest of the season? Like, even after Minnesota and Buffalo, let's say he struggles a little bit against Minnesota and Buffalo, and he comes back and they play the Lions before they play the Jaguars on Thursday. Do you see him, like, I don't expect Zach to play again this season. That's just kind of like my opinion. And I don't think Saleh would go to Flacco if White was struggling, unless maybe he just really felt that he's got to do something because the Jets are still teetering on a playoff berth. Do you just see at this point Mike White as the starter for the rest of the season until proven otherwise?
I mean, if I had to guess, yes or no, I'd say yes. But, I mean, the scenario exists. They lose these next 2 games. Perfect opportunity. You put Zach Wilson back in the lineup, see if he's learned anything against a softer spot on the schedule.
Not Chris Streveler?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think they'd go that route either, right?
Jets Nation, when they announced that Mike White was the starter, and I said, let me go on Facebook because I know the comments are going to be all pissy because gotta love. And right away, first comment I say, why aren't they starting Streveler? He killed it in the preseason. He's so mobile, and I'm like, oh, for the love of God.
People just don't get it. Like, I mean, there's been so many Jet quarterbacks that have had great preseasons, and we hype them up, and it never amounts to anything. But to your point, there is a chance that Zach doesn't play again. I mean, that's the reality. When you bench the number 2 pick, there's a chance the guy that comes in, if he plays well, I mean, you're not going to reinsert Zach Wilson into the lineup if Mike White's playing well and the team's in the playoff race. So there is a chance that Zach doesn't play again. I know Salah doesn't want to get into hypotheticals, but he's not pulling Mike White if they go beat the Vikings. They go 2-1 during the stretch of Chicago, Minnesota, and Buffalo, or they lose to Minnesota, but he plays a good game against Buffalo and they win. So the only avenue I see Zach Wilson getting back in the lineup is either injury or Mike White has a couple games in a row where he's ineffective. Because I really think this game on Sunday, he earned at least a couple games here. Like if he has a bad game against Minnesota, I don't think they bench him for Buffalo. I think they give Mike White a real opportunity here. I think they looked at it like it's a 3-game sample size. Let's see what he could do. And if he's not good, we go back to Zach. If he is playing well, then you know what? We're trying to make the playoffs. Like draft status for Zach Wilson be damned. We have the longest playoff drought in football. If you're Robert Saleh, if you're Joe Douglas, think about what adding to your resume would do to break that drought. It just gives you so much cachet amongst this fan base if you can get this team to the playoffs, and they have the team to do it.
And it seems like they love him. Like the players, absolutely love him. Like it's like crazy. I mean, interrupting his post-game press conference, almost body slammed him yesterday. I thought it was hilarious. Like
the legend of Mike White.
I know. I just can't get over how much these players absolutely love this guy. I think it's awesome. Like I really do.
I just hope he's good. I hope I just want him to consistently play well. I mean, I don't know if we could expect him to go 300 yards and 3 touchdowns every game, right? But I mean, if he's just competent, they have a good team. Everyone brings up the Buffalo game from a year ago, and he was not good in that game. But this Jets team this year is light years better than that team last year. They have better tight ends, receivers, offensive linemen, running game. This is despite all the injuries. Imagine if this team had Breece Hall right now, what we would be saying, or they had AVT still. They've overcome a lot, but they have damn good football players, man. Garrett Wilson is awesome. Elijah Moore is alive now. You have 2 legit tight ends. Corey Davis is really solid as your, number 3 at this point. So Mike White's in a good spot, and he's playing for his NFL livelihood, right? He's not going to overlook any team or not prepare. This is his shot. He's got his opportunity here to be the guy, and he's waited a long time for that. And I hope he takes full advantage of it. I'd love nothing more than for us to be like, wow, they stumbled upon their long-term answer at quarterback. How awesome would that be?
Yeah. Now, do you think, that Robert Saleh, had a short leash with Zach Wilson when considering all the factors that, he only had 20 starts of his NFL career. He was 5-2 this year, and his only 2 losses came against the best coach of all time. So do you think it was the right move to bench Zach Wilson, especially going into a weak Bears team?
Originally, I thought the move was you start Zach, you send the warning call to him that, hey, you better start playing better, otherwise you could lose your job. And you hope that maybe lights a fire under his ass and he'd play well against a bad Bears team. But I think the way that game went last week in New England, how it wasn't bad. It was one of the worst quarterback performances we'll probably ever see in our lifetime. I mean, they had 2 yards of offense in the second half. I think the locker room would have had a mutiny if you didn't make a change there. I think you had to hold Zach accountable for his poor play. I mean, you can't fool the locker room. The locker room is seeing Mike White play really well, reportedly at practice, and here's Zach Wilson airmailing throws to wide open players. So I think that had a lot to do with it. I thought he was going to start on a short leash, but I give credit to Saleh, man. He's got balls. He knows the locker room. He made this decision within the best interest of the team. And I think Robert Saleh's kind of earned the benefit of the doubt to make this type of move. And you can't say it didn't work. I mean, Mike White comes in. The first drive I thought was so telling. They go right down the field. He spreads the ball out to 5 different receivers on that drive, and they put up 7. And you're thinking, all right, well, they made the right move. They probably could have won if Zach Wilson played on Sunday, but I don't know if Zach Wilson's having a stat line like what Mike White did. I mean, Mike White now has produced 2 of the best games a Jet quarterback has had in 25 years. We can't ignore it. We got to give him a real opportunity here and see if they've, maybe stumbled upon a solid quarterback for this franchise going forward.
But the one thing I loved about the solid decision to start White was he put the team in front of the player because he realized, and I'm sure Joe Douglas realized it, that they have a legitimate shot at the playoffs, most likely as a wild card, but a possibility to be a division winner, depending on how the rest of the season plays out. And I guess when you make a decision like that and the team sees it, they're like, let's freaking go, because now you're all in and you're caring more about what guys like Elijah Moore are thinking, or Garrett Wilson's thinking, what all the other players are thinking. And that, to me, was an awesome move by Sal. Like, listen, I like Zach. I really want to see him succeed, but I want to see the team in the playoffs too. And the fact is, if Zach's not getting the job done, you got to sit him. In fact, I would have had no issue with him sitting him during the Patriot game if he's not getting the job done. I don't know if White would have led them to a win over the Patriots, but it clearly was not Zach Wilson that was going to do it.
Yeah, no doubt. And, you know, I like Zach too, and I want to see him succeed. And I by no means do I think he's a finished product. Like, I still think he has the potential to be really good. Like, I understand why they took him second overall. You see his arm strength, his athletic ability. You see, like, the ability is there. He's not ready yet, though. And I think it became mental with him. I mean, I guess he was 5-2 as a starter, but it's not like he was playing great in a lot of these games. You know, give him credit. I thought he was phenomenal in the fourth quarter against Pittsburgh. I thought he played a good game against Miami. You know, he made some plays against Buffalo, but he only had 154 yards in that one. I think the Jets kind of saw the writing on the wall when they elevated Mike White to the number 2 spot to kind of get him ready. In case they said it was in case Zach got hurt, but I think it was in case, you know, they realized they're at a crossroads in their season where the quarterback's holding them back. That was the point we got to last week. So while I thought Zach was going to start yesterday, I give Robert Saleh a lot of credit for kind of understanding the locker room and making a move in the best interest of the team. Like, we're Jet fans. They have a chance to end the longest playoff drought in the NFL. That is bigger than developing Zach Wilson, who we have no idea whether or not he's ever going to be the guy. Like, everyone's killing Mike LaFleur. Well, every other quarterback besides Zach Wilson seemingly has had success with Mike LaFleur calling the plays here. So at what point do we just say, hey, maybe the quarterback's not that good and you actually have a pretty good play caller? So these are conversations that are being had right now, but ultimately it's about winning. And Mike White clearly at this given time gives them a better chance to win than Zach Wilson. So I respect the decision by Saleh. I think it showed a lot of balls to make that move.
Now, one thing we saw from Mike White yesterday was, and something we haven't seen, I guess, from a while, like you mentioned, like, you know, Mike White's been putting up these great numbers in the games he's played. One thing we saw from Mike White yesterday, he's got the ball to 10 different receivers yesterday.
Yeah.
You know, one of the guys, you know, finally emerging yesterday was Elijah Moore. So do you think that with Mike White as the quarterback now for what we think is going to be the remainder of the season, do you think Elijah Moore can, you know, break out the rest of the season?
I sure hope so. I mean, it's kind of wild that Elijah Moore's had his best games pretty much without Zach Wilson being the quarterback. You know, there was a game last year against the Eagles. I think Elijah Moore was pretty good with Zach at quarterback. But, yeah, I mean, look, the reality is if you go back and watch the Patriot film, there's guys open. He's not throwing the ball. Like, it's very frustrating if you're a fan who's, like, rooting for Zach Wilson. You're like, dude, like, there's a guy open. Hit him. Mins open for a touchdown. Moore on that 3rd and 1 last week. Open. He doesn't see him. Like, I just think it got to a point where it became so mental with Zach. They just wanted to give him that reset. But there's no guarantee he gets the job back. But one thing is for sure, Chris, Elijah Moore looks like a different player. I mean, he made 2 big catches, 2 huge plays in this game yesterday. And, you know, I suspect he's going to continue to get opportunities here with Mike White throwing him the ball. This dates back to last year. Elijah Moore was very good with Mike White throwing him the ball. So I hope that continues because we know Elijah Moore is really talented. And it was pretty crazy to me that he had barely any impact at the beginning of the year, either with Flacco or obviously with Zach Wilson when he came back.
You know, one thing I kind of didn't like about the Zach bashing was, look, you can bash him for his play all you want, you know, because he was. You can't defend the indefensible at that point. With the Patriot game. However, I thought it was kind of low. It was kind of a low blow to take shots at his like the entitlement, like the sense of entitlement type of stuff and everything like that. And I think even like Booger McFarland on ESPN had made a comment that he doesn't know what it's like to be a leader because he comes from this background of being like rich or whatever it was and everything. And in your opinion, what did you think of those comments? Did you think it was getting too far to the point where it was like, well, he's just a prima donna. He's just completely, you know, he has a sense of entitlement to the job. And, you know, and I think even somebody used the term white privilege when they were talking about him. I mean, why are we focusing on everything that happens off the field, like just of his personality compared to what it is on the field? Because the decision was made more for how bad he was on the field. It had nothing to do with anything off the field. We don't really know anything about that stuff, but was it a good idea? Do you think it's fair to attack Zach's character based off of one comment that maybe came off the wrong way, but maybe that was not the intention?
Yeah, I'm with you, Craig. I thought what Booger said was a little unfair. I mean, saying Zach Wilson's entitled or he's privileged or because he comes from money, he can't work hard or be successful or be a good leader is like BS. Like last I checked, Peyton Manning and Eli Manning grew up with the last name Manning. Had to work out for them, right? So I just think that's such a lazy take that and it's not just Booger, like Jet fans saying it too. Oh, his uncle owns JetBlue. He's spoiled. He's a brat. Or like I think that's unfair, man. Zach Wilson got benched because he wasn't playing well. I don't think we have to character assassinate the guy. Like he's still a Jet last time I checked, and there's still a scenario where he is the quarterback for the Jets at some point this season. So I don't understand why we have to. Can I curse on this?
Yeah.
I don't understand why we have to shit all over Zach Wilson to praise Mike White. Like we could acknowledge Mike White played a great game and leave Zach Wilson out of it. That's how I've looked at it. And I was dealing with this on the postgame show last night. People calling in trashing Zach. I'm like, the Jets won the game. Can we focus on the fact they're 7-4? That they now have more wins this year than they had the last 2 years combined? That they're playing meaningful games after Thanksgiving for the first time in 7 years? But a lot of people in this fan base want to like either go after Zach or defend Zach and say Mike White's. It's just, can we be united over the fact that the team has a chance to make the playoffs for the first time in 12 seasons?
Yeah.
I think we've talked enough about Zach. We all know what's going on, but like this Jet defense, I mean, you want to talk about a complete 360 from last year, and it's insane. Like the guys, I mean, yeah, you added a couple of guys here and there with DJ Reed. I mean, DJ Reed looks like the steal of the offseason, to be perfectly honest. He's producing one of the best, like he's one of the best DBs in football right now. He's playing fantastically. Quan Alexander was another steal that we got late in the offseason. And Quinn Williams is finally taking that step forward, and he looks fantastic. I mean, do you think that's just a company of like finally buying into Salah's system and Ulbricht's system too?
Yeah, I think it's a combination of year two in the system, guys just having career like Quinn Williams. He's been good. He's been great this year, though. Like he was a good player. He's taking his game to a whole different level. You're getting Carl Lawson back. That was an under-discussed thing all offseason. Like Joe Douglas's top free agent signing a year ago didn't play a snap for the team at all. Like that was a big deal to not have Carl Lawson. You got him back. They're getting a resurgent season from LaMarcus Joyner. Obviously, you mentioned DJ Reed. He's played like a Pro Bowler this year, and Sauce Gardner's been an All-Pro as a rookie. So you add that to this defense, they're going to be a lot better. But I think Jeff Ulbrich deserves a lot of credit ever since that sideline blow-up before a halftime of the Bengals game in Week 3. The Jets have had arguably the best defense in football from that point on. It's certainly in the top three. Since the Quinn Williams blow-up with the defensive line coach, they have had that good of a defense in the top three, maybe even better than that. So it's been awesome, man. And I think Robert Saleh is not getting enough credit for being a Coach of the Year candidate. I talked about this.
I completely agree with you there, man.
Oh, without a doubt.
1,000%.
I mean, he took over a bad football team. They won 4 games last year. The previous year, they won 2. So they won 6 total games the last 2 years. Last year, they were the 32nd ranked defense. Here they are, top 5 defense in every statistical category. He's won games this year with 3 different quarterbacks. And let's be real, other than this Mike White game on Sunday, most of the quarterback play this year has been average to below average, if we're being fair. And he's overcome how many injuries to the offensive line? They're on their, 5th string tackle right now. You lose your best offensive player in AVT, maybe your other best offensive player in Breece Hall. And here are the Jets, 7-4. And if the season ended today, they'd be in the playoffs. I think Robert Saleh deserves a lot more credit for Coach of the Year in the NFL.
Oh, you're absolutely right. And, people at the beginning of the season when we lost George Fant, everyone was like, well, that's what happens. We should have drafted Iguanu or Evan Neal or someone like that. And I was like, no, relax. We needed more help on the offensive line, in the secondary than we did on the offensive line, because you had to go into the season thinking Mekhi Becton was going to be playing left tackle and George Fant was going to be playing right, or vice versa, whatever it was. You had to go in thinking that season. So no matter what Iguanu and Neal were off the question, and drafting Sauce was clearly the right option. He's probably going to win Rookie of the Year. He today came out that he's leading corners in Pro Bowl votes. This guy is the real fucking deal. He really is.
Yeah, I can't remember a rookie this good. And, I was at the game yesterday, and obviously they put Revis up in the Ring of Honor. Like, as great as Revis was, and he's the best defensive player I've ever watched with the Jets in my lifetime, I have never seen a Jet rookie play this well. And that includes Revis, who obviously didn't really become Revis till that 2008 season and beyond. Sauce has been great, man. He does everything well. He is like a total team guy, and just teammates love him. I mean, there's nothing not to like about Sauce Gardner. And then you throw in that entire rookie class as a whole. Garrett Wilson doing what he's doing right now. Obviously, Breece Hall was probably the favorite for Offensive Rookie of the Year before he got hurt. Tremaine Johnson's had a really good rookie season when he's had his opportunities out there. Max Mitchell's back, but he was playing well before he got hurt. Like, you're getting contributions from everyone in this rookie class, and it's a big reason why the Jets are 7-4.
I just remember we were always screaming for more pass rush. I mean, under every other coach before Saleh got here, we just like, man, we have no pass rush, no pass rush. And then finally, we now have Carl Lawson, we have Jermaine Johnson, we have, Quinnen Williams, John Franklin Myers, and probably my personal favorite Jet right now, Bryce Huff.
Right.
The guy just makes plays. And Klim, how many times did I say when we were doing the show? I was like, it was killing me that Bryce Huff was inactive for the beginning of the season. I couldn't understand why he was constantly inactive. I was like, his speed off the edge is going to disrupt a quarterback. And they finally, I can't remember when he was first active. I want to say it was week 4.
I think it was the Steelers game. Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, ever since then, he got in, he got a sack yesterday. He's always in the backfield going after the quarterback. He's the one who got Josh Allen to fumble the football. Just, we've always been wanting it. We finally got it, and it's just like a beauty to watch on the field, like them just getting after the quarterback and putting ridiculous amounts of pressure on the quarterback.
No doubt. Bryce Huff, by the way, might be the best player acquired in the 2020 draft. Like, he was an undrafted free agent that year, but we'll count him as part of that 2020 draft class, man. He's been awesome. And you're right. Since he's been on the field, this defense has been noticeably a lot better.
No, without a doubt. Like Craig just mentioned, I'm looking at the stats right now. You have over 10 guys with a sack this year. I can't even remember when we had a season when we had 5 guys with at least 1 sack. Like, Quinnen Williams, 8 sacks. Carl Lawson, 5. JFM, 4. Bryce Huff, 4. Jermaine Johnson has 3. Like, this is what we wanted to see out of the Jets for so long. And I think it goes to attest that the Jets have so much depth on this defensive line that it's keeping everyone fresh, whether it's, Jermaine Johnson playing, Carl Lawson, Vinny Curry, Bryce Huff. I'll go down the list of Jets players, but the depth and keeping everyone fresh, you keep a rotation there. It's so good that the Jets are doing this.
100%. And it speaks volumes just to the roster that Joe Douglas has put together, right? I mean, obviously, look, if Zach Wilson doesn't end up being the guy that's going to be on Joe Douglas's resume, but some of the best GMs in the NFL are able to admit a mistake and move on. Howie Roseman, who obviously Joe Douglas came from the Philadelphia Eagles, he moved on from Carson Wentz after he paid the guy. What did they do? Well, he drafted Jalen Hurts, and now look at the Eagles. They drafted him, developed him, and now Jalen Hurts in his 3rd year is really taking off. So, good GMs can admit a mistake and pivot. And I think Joe Douglas has kind of earned the opportunity here based on what he's done to kind of see this rebuild through. And the rebuild's over. This team's ready to win right now. And that's why they're going for it with Mike White at quarterback at this given situation. If the Jets were, they were 4-6, or I guess if they were 4-7 instead of 7-4, Zach Wilson would be playing right now. But because they are a win now team, because this defense is ahead of schedule, they're going for it. And I think that's a great thing. If you're a fan of this team for the first time in a long time, you feel like they got a long-term plan in place that you could believe in.
Mm-hmm. And hypothetically, too, if Zach, if the Jets move on from Zach and he winds up turning into a better, if Mike White turns into a better quarterback, Joe Douglas gave us Mike White. So it kind of cancels, because I think he brought in Mike White when he took over as GM, because I don't think Mike White wasn't here before that. He wasn't here under Mike McCagnon, right? From what I remember.
I'm trying to check that. Let's
man, I can't remember if or maybe he was just a guy who was signed, then cut, then signed. He's one of those guys.
So let's see. They NYJ, let's see, 2019. NYJ free agent. The Jets waived him on.
Well, yeah, he was 20. Mike White was signed in 2019 to the Jets practice squad.
Yep, that's Joe Douglas.
Yep.
So yeah, Joe Douglas found a franchise quarterback. And let's hope we could say that. That'd be nice.
So I wanted to ask you though, because I've noticed now, like the team has really seemed to be very high on Denzel Mims, because when he was inactive all those weeks, and Jet fans were freaking out because they couldn't figure out why he was inactive, and then he was making those really bad mistakes, and then this year he finally got his shot. He's been playing a little bit better. I don't expect him to be like this elite 1,000-yard receiver, but there are some things he does very well, especially like blocking is one of his things he does well, and he does make some big catches. Going into next year with 23, because the Jets are going to have some decisions to make with regards to the cap, do you see a situation where Mims stays on the team and takes over the role that Corey Davis currently has, just because Corey Davis, while I love him, he's just always hurt. And then on top of that, I think his cap hit's kind of high net going into next year.
It's certainly on the table. I guess it depends how they finish, right? Like if Corey Davis could step up here down the stretch, build that chemistry with Mike White, and Mike White's going to be the guy, who knows? Or maybe it's back to Zach. Maybe you got to think long and hard about just letting Corey Davis go over his, I think it's $12 million his cap hit next year. Could you move on from him easily? Yeah, I think it's certainly possible. But I think a lot of that stuff is undecided. Like, I think it's interesting. You got 6 games left. You're 7-4. A lot of the future of this team is going to be based on how they finish here. I mean, Mike White's playing for his livelihood, of course, but Corey Davis, if he gets hurt again or he doesn't play that well down the stretch, I could very easily see them moving on, and they have Mims under contract. So that could be the easy answer there. Berrios is signed again next year too. So they don't need to keep Corey Davis, but I think they love Corey Davis based on what Saleh has said and his impact in the locker room. So we'll kind of see how that plays out. But I think Corey Davis is very much playing for his job with the Jets going forward.
You said you were at the game yesterday, and I saw on your what part of social media I saw, but you met Fireman Ed. What was that?
It was awesome. So I've had him on the YouTube show a bunch, and he always told me, he's like, next time you're at a game, let me know. We'll get together. So I told him I was going to be at the game, and he surprised me at my tailgate. He just showed up looking for me, saying my dad thought it was the coolest thing in the world, that Fireman Ed. My dad's the reason why I'm a Jet fan. Took me to my first game and all that. He thought it was like the craziest thing in the world that Fireman Ed was seeking out me to say hello. So that was an awesome moment. And then he comes over to our tailgate. We chop it up for a little bit. And then he goes, hey, if you have time, come by my tailgate. He was like a couple lots over. And he's like, I do a shot of this like Irish whiskey thing. I'm trying to remember the name of the brand. I wish I did. But he's like, I do it before every game. I'd be honored if you and your dad could take the shot with me. So I'm there. So we go over to Fireman Ed tailgate and we take a shot in the honor of his brother Frankie, who he was obviously on his shoulders for all those years leading the Jets chant. He unfortunately passed away with cancer, like right before the Jet season started. So he does a shot in his brother's honor now before every game, and I got to take that shot with him, which was so cool. He's such an awesome guy. He took pictures with everyone that asked. Just great dude, and it was so cool to finally meet him in person.
Oh, that's awesome.
I want to jump now to the. I got to talk some Texans with you, because you're in Houston, you cover them. I know it's been an abysmal season.
Oh yeah.
I guess it's an understatement. I was thinking about this a lot today, because they were bad last year. They were bad this year. They fired David Culley last year. I don't know what the status is of Lovie Smith going into next year, but how much of this season do you pin on Lovie compared to Nick Caserio? Because Caserio's been there now for 2 years. And I know he finally made the Watson trade. He got picks back and everything. But the team is, you said it, worse this year than they were last year. I mean, how much of this is on Nick Caserio more than it is on Lovie Smith?
I think it's on both of them. And I would have major concerns because, like, Lovie Smith, I think, is not a very good head coach. There's only one team in the NFL that would give him a third chance to be a head coach. I mean, Lovie Smith's had 5 winning seasons in 17 years as a head coach. And that all happened in Chicago over a decade ago. So you look at Lovie Smith in Tampa, failed. Lovie Smith as a college head coach at Illinois, failed. Lovie Smith here in Houston, the team's worse than they were last year. And I thought David Culley was a bad coach. And Lovie Smith has been just as bad, if not worse. So it's certainly on Lovey. His coaching staff hires have been a disaster. The offensive coordinator for the Texans, Pep Hamilton, is horrendous. He's worse than the guy they had in Tim Kelly, who I thought was bad last year. So it's been a nightmare of a season for them. Now, they are probably going to end up with the first pick, but here's the thing. I don't know if I want Nick Caserio hiring another coach. He's going to get 3 coaches in 3 years, and I don't know if I want Nick Caserio evaluating which quarterback to take. He took Derek Stingley over Sauce Gardner. He chose to take Kenyon Green over Jordan Davis or Kyle Hamilton or Tyler Linderbaum. Like, there's some warning signs with Caserio. His trades have not been great. His free agent signings have not been great. The hiring of Culley and Lovey Smith, and if it wasn't going to be Lovey, it was going to be Josh McCown. This has been just a disaster. So to answer your question, Craig, I think a lot of it's Lovey, but Lovey's in charge because of Nick. So I think they're both responsible for the mess that is the Texans right now.
You know, you mentioned, how Caserio just sucks, basically. But the one thing he got right, it looks like, is Dameon Pierce. Like, is he going to be, like, the focal point of the Texans offense for years to come, it looks like?
The problem with him is, it's a good pick. They got him in the 4th round, obviously, but he's a non-premium position, right? He's a running back. So it's like you can only rely on that. Like, you got to find a quarterback. You got to have receivers. Like, the last 2 games, Dameon Pierce has been held to 8 yards in each game. So teams realize he's the entire offense. Stop him, and we're going to win the game because Davis Mills and Kyle Allen aren't going to beat us. So like that's basically been the opponent's game plan the last 2 weeks. I mean, I get this for a stat, guys. They have been outscored 50-0 in the first half the last 2 games. 50-0. And then this most recent game, they're down 30-0 to the Dolphins. And I got to listen to Lovey Smith after the game talk about how, well, there were some positives for what we did in the second half. Oh, you mean when Tua didn't play and the Dolphins stopped trying? Like, come on. So it's an absolute disaster. If Lovey Smith was the head coach of either the Jets or Giants, he would have been fired by now. That's how bad it's been.
Now, to piggyback, to talk about, Davis Mills, I kind of felt like he was really thrown out to the wolves in his first year because it was a 3rd-round pick. And they were still trying. They couldn't at the time. That was when the Watson rumors were really, trade rumors were really kind of heating up. And then all these, the sexual assault allegations just squashed that, like completely squashed it. Fast forward to this year, outside of Brandon Cooks and maybe Dameon Pierce, they haven't really given him much to work with. And over the last 2 years, they just really haven't had a lot of talent. Do you think in many ways Davis Mills was set up to fail as a starting quarterback with 2 head coaches in 2 seasons? I'm assuming 2 offensive coordinators in 2 seasons, and a lack of talent on the offensive side of the ball and a bad offensive line.
Yes, he was. But the problem is when you're a 3rd-round pick, you got to overcome your draft status if you're going to prove you're going to be the guy long term. Like he everything you said is true. At the same time, he has not played well. He's turned the ball over too much. He's been really inconsistent. Like, his home road splits are abysmal if you go and look. He hasn't been good enough. So, yes, I do think that, if he had a better situation around him, he would be better. But, if you're going to be the team's franchise quarterback, you got to win more than just 1 game. And the only game they've won has been against the Jaguars this year. And they're worse this year than they were last year. So, I think Davis Mills maybe could be on the team next year. Maybe eventually he gets another opportunity to start for somebody at some point here. But the reality is, if they're the worst team in football and they end up picking 1-1, that's got to be a quarterback that you take first overall. It just has to be.
I'm going to switch it over to, I know you're a Yankees boy, so I got to bring up Aaron Judge, man. What's are the Yankees going to sign him this year?
Yeah, I mean, I'd be surprised if they didn't, right? Like, I get asked this a lot. Who's the free agent that the Yankees have wanted that they haven't been able to get, or the player that's been their own that they wanted to keep that they didn't? Like, you want to tell me, oh, Robinson Cano? Like, they didn't want to give him a 10-year deal. They offered him 7, and they were good with letting him walk. The mistake was signing Jacoby Ellsbury to replace him, but like letting Robinson Cano walk was the right move. I just think the 2 sides need each other here. Like, I don't think Judge truly wants to leave, and I think the Yankees will make a very competitive offer to whatever the Giants or another team might offer him. I think they name him the captain when they re-sign him. And I think if they have to go above and beyond to keep him, they will. I think he's that important for their brand, for ticket sales. I mean, what would this Yankees team be without him? Like, I don't even know if they make the playoffs without him this past year. He was the only guy that hit for what was basically the entire second half of the season after that great start they got off to. So I've said all along, I think he's back. I'd be surprised if he's not. And that's just kind of how I felt from really the beginning in all this.
I would be remiss to ask a Yankee fan a Mets question, so I'm going to do it. Being as though you're in Texas right now with Houston and with, I know you're not really near Arlington. What are you hearing around the Texas area regarding Justin Verlander with the Astros, and a lot of rumors going around about the Texas Rangers making a strong run at Jacob deGrom?
Yeah, the buzz with the Astros and Verlander has been like they want to keep him, but they're not going to do everything possible to keep him. Like if someone's going to offer Justin Verlander at age 40 a Max Scherzer contract, which is what he wants, I don't think that's going to be the Astros. The Astros right now have 6 other starters that they could plug in. 6. Like they could lose Verlander and immediately still have 6 guys they feel really good about. That's how stupid deep they are in their pitching rotation. So I think they'd like to keep Verlander. Why wouldn't you? He's the American League Cy Young Award winner. He was awesome, but I don't think they'll do everything possible to keep him. As far as the Rangers, they make sense for Verlander. They make sense for deGrom. They make sense for Rodon. Like they have money to spend. They hired Bruce Bochy, which symbols you want to win now. They spent a fortune last offseason. They have a new ballpark. It would make sense for them to spend on one of those pitchers, but I'm just not sure which one it's going to be. Like I still think deGrom will go back to the Mets because Steve Cohen will pay him whatever to keep him. But if deGrom doesn't want to be a Met, is he going to get a competitive offer from a different team? He might, but I mean, it's very tricky. I think Verlander might be the first domino to fall just because it's very obvious what he's looking for. He met with the Dodgers today, so I feel like it's a matter of time before something happens there at some point. But if it's truly a Scherzer deal or bust, I don't think that's going to be the Astros given that. So he'll be on a different team.
I just don't get the vibe that deGrom wants to be back. Like I don't know what it is. Like I just don't see this like that it's mutual that yeah, he definitely wants to be back with the Mets. And I mean, it's understandable that he's going to chase offers, and I think Texas might try to blow him out of the water with money. But I always got, from what I kept reading, he wanted to be close to his hometown, and Texas is nowhere near that.
No, I never understood he wants to be like Max Scherzer wanted to be on the West Coast, and then Steve Cohen's like, well, here's $43 million a year. So, like ultimately, money talks. You know?
Go ahead, Cliff.
I was going to say, speaking of Houston, today the Astros, they signed Jose Abreu. So what does adding a bat like Jose Abreu mean to that lineup?
The best team in baseball got better. I mean, Jose Abreu probably would hit 6 for the Astros right now. I mean, seriously.
That's insane.
Altuve, Pena, Bregman, Yordan, Kyle Tucker, Abreu is 1 through 6. I mean, they're probably going to re-sign Michael Brantley. So there's your DH. Like, it's stupid how good they are. And their pitching's insane. Like, being a Yankee fan in Houston's torture because the Astros just own the Yankees, and I have to hear about it all the time. And they seemingly aren't going anywhere. They're going to be just as good again next year. So I just assume the Astros are going to win every year because that's basically been my life since I've been down here in Houston.
But does that also mean the end of Gurriel then in Houston? Or since OU comes in and, you said before, if they bring back Brantley, do they moving forward behind the plate or are they going to try to bring back Vasquez? Or are they going to try to bring or go with Martin Maldonado?
So Maldonado's under contract, so I think he'll start. Vasquez is a free agent. I think they like Maldi. They'd like to get maybe a better backup to Maldi because Maldi's a guy that doesn't hit at all, but he manages the staff well and he's good defensively. So they could get away with obviously him being their catcher. As far as Yuli, I think they would like Yuli back if he'd give him a hometown discount. He could play other positions besides first base, so maybe he could kind of be their utility infielder if he's open to that role. I mean, he had a bad regular season. He had a very good postseason though, but he's 38 years old. I don't know how many teams are dying to sign 38-year-old Yuli Gurriel. So I could see Yuli taking like a 1-year deal to stay with the Astros. So maybe that's their next move. But as far as him starting at first, that obviously is done with Abreu signing a 3-year deal.
All right, so I always every time we have you on, I always got to mention Cortica. How was the game this year? Yeah, I know you went.
The game was tremendous. I mean, Ithaca not only won, but they destroyed Cortland again at Yankee Stadium. There were 42,000 fans there, which I think was the second highest ever attended D3 football game. Number 1 was the MetLife Cortica game in 2019. Mm-hmm. So. I mean, this was awesome. And Ithaca's still playing. They made the playoffs for the first time since 2014 this year. Oh, get this. They're undefeated right now. So they went 10-0 in the regular season. They won their first 2 playoff games. So they're one of the final 8 left. in the D3 playoffs. So they're 12-0 with a first-year coach. Their head coach used to be their defensive coordinator a couple of years ago. He left. They brought him back because the former head coach left to be the offensive coordinator at UPenn. So here's Mike Turper. He has not lost a game yet, and I think is having its best season since 2003. They had their first undefeated regular season since, I think, 1986. So, I mean, Bomber football is alive and well, fellas. I mean, what more do you need?
I feel like, when I was picking out colleges, when I was in high school, Cortland was my number one school. So I always had like a special place for Cortland in my heart. But now, the more I've gotten to know you over the years. I mean, I think I might be rooting for Ithaca here on out. I definitely want to go to a Cortica game in next year at least.
It's fun, man. I don't know the next time they're going to do it. Like, I think a cool idea would be like every 2 years they do it at a different like stadium around New York. Like they should do it at Citi Field next, because you get the tailgating aspect at Citi Field. Yankee Stadium was great, but like the pregame was just like us going to like Billy's and Stands and whatnot. So it was a very interesting dynamic there. But they did it at MetLife. They've done Yankee Stadium. Maybe they do Orchard Park where the Bills are going to be playing their new stadium in a couple of years. But it's pretty cool to move this game around. There's so many alumni that live in the New York area that went to both schools. So It's awesome, man. And for those kids playing in the game, like it's a forever experience to say you played a D3 game at Yankee Stadium or MetLife. So it's pretty cool, man. Both schools are awesome. And it's so cool. They've done this now twice over the last 3 years.
All right, so Jake, number one, being in Texas, I appreciate you representing the Islanders. The Islanders, orange and blue, they're off to a great start.
They are.
I'm blown away by how good they've been playing because not that I expect them to be a bad team. I just didn't know what to expect because they really didn't do much in the offseason. And I guess they were just really banking on guys who struggled last year to kind of be better this year. And so far, it's kind of paid off. Give me your thoughts on, do you think that Barry Trotz not being there is a factor with Lane Lambert there now? Do you think that Lane Lambert being the new coach has definitely woken something up? In your opinion, do you think the Islander players got a little tired of Trotz?
Yeah, I didn't think they'd be this good this quickly either. I mean, Lane Lambert obviously was an unknown on what he would be as a head coach. I don't know if it's a bad look for Barry or whatnot, but maybe Lou Lamoriello deserves a little more credit than us Islander fans wanted to give him, right? Like he felt like they needed a new voice.
They were crucifying the guy on Long Island.
Yeah, look, I hated getting rid of Trotz. Like as an Islander fan for most of my life, Craig, like they've been awful. And you have this guy that comes in who's won a Stanley Cup, and all he does in his first 3 years is take them to the playoffs and win around, and then go to the conference finals in back-to-back years. Why are we getting rid of this guy? Like, what are we doing? But I can't deny that it's worked so far. Obviously, it's a long season, but last year they were a lot better than people realized. The COVID stuff absolutely screwed them. The 13-game road trip to start the year was total BS. So they're a good team. Obviously, they have a world-class goaltender that's going to give you a chance every single night. They got a bunch of guys that have played together for a long time. So they're really good. The question's going to be what happens when we get to the postseason. But there were a lot of Islander fans that didn't even think this was a playoff team. So I think those fans have had to kind of eat some crow early on this year, which has been awesome. And I'm included. I didn't like getting rid of Barry, as I said, but I'm a fan first. Like I just want the team to do well and not my takes to be right. So I'm thrilled with how they've been playing, and I can't wait to get to a game at UBS this season.
Now, this is my last question. I know I saw on your Twitter bio you said you're a Chipotle connoisseur.
That's right.
One, why Chipotle? Because I don't like Chipotle.
Oh my God,
I'm a mode guy.
Can you tell him the double meat theory? Like when you do the double, like when you do you can't order online or something like that. You have to go there.
Well, yeah. I mean, Chris, it's very disappointing, man. You can be a Moe's and Chipotle guy. Like it doesn't have to be either or. Like
I said Chipotle the other night.
It's great. I had it for dinner.
I have my only gripe with Chipotle is that every time I order burrito, and it fails every time. Every time I order burrito, it falls apart. And then people are like, well, why don't you just order a bowl? Well, I don't want a bowl. I want a burrito. If I wanted a bowl, I would order a bowl. They're like, no. Then you get the tortillas on the side. Like, no, that's not my job to make the burritos. It's their job to make burritos, not mine.
Yeah, you make a salient point. I can't debate that. I'm a bowl guy first and foremost, but I was going to suggest you get it in a bowl and then you get the tortilla on the side so you can control the portion size that you put in. The problem is, I used to be a burrito guy, but I'm with you. It falls apart all the time. Unless you know
they put too much in there.
Server is an experienced burrito roller, it's tough to trust them. So I'm a big tortilla on the side, but what Craig was bringing up, here's how you maximize your bowl for all you out there listening. You go in there and never order online because they never give you the right amount of ingredients in the bowl if you order online. You got to hold your server accountable. Always ask for half chicken, half steak. They'll give you the same amount of each as if you ordered just steak or chicken. So that's one trick. They also don't charge you for extra rice or beans. So if you're really hungry, you can go down that route. And if you want a tip on how to potentially not pay for guac, always get lettuce on your guac when they do the transfer from the person who puts on the guac to the cashier. A lot of times they look at the bowl real quick. They see there's lettuce over your bowl. They don't realize it's camouflaged into the guac. So they don't realize you got guac. All of a sudden, they're not charging you for guac. And also, by the way, you do half chicken, half steak. On occasion, maybe they only charge you just for chicken, not realizing there's steak in the bowl as well. That also makes your order cheaper. So you maximize it from, an overall getting filled up standpoint, but also from a saving money standpoint. Those are some tricks at Chipotle.
What? Will you now go back to Chipotle? Do you have more respect for Chipotle?
I like I said, I have no. I love Chipotle. I think Chipotle food's good. But it's the burrito. That's the only gripe I have with it. When I go to Moe's, my burrito doesn't fall apart.
Now at Moe's, I love the stack. That's always my go-to at Moe's. Like growing, like the stack to me is top notch. There's no Moe's in Houston though. That's the problem. So I go to Chipotle all the time. I would go to Moe's a lot more if it was available. I don't have that access here in Houston.
I have a place right down the street that it's not Moe's or Chipotle or anything, but to Klim's point, I get a burrito from there, and if they're not an experienced burrito roller, which I agree with you, it falls apart very quickly. Like you barely take 2 bites and the whole thing just kind of like falls apart.
Great. What you got near you? You got a Qdoba? What is that? What you got near you?
What's that?
I said, what's the place near you? Qdoba, Cabo Fresh?
No, what these brothers right down the street, they opened a burger place, and the place took off, and like they're making like they're packed like all the time. So they got so big, they moved to a bigger place right across the street. And then their old spot they made into a taco place. So they were a burger shack, now they're called Taco Shack. And the only thing was like their food is incredible. Like it's really, really good. It's just that I guess I was expecting more like creative, like order like stuff like for burritos. I don't know. I guess it was me. I was expecting stuff with like flaming hot Cheetos or like Takis, like that type of stuff. It's still pretty basic, but the problem is that they give you a lot of food. Like when you order a burrito, they really hook it up. And that's the problem, because then it just like it all disintegrates. Yeah. Like 3 bites in, it all falls apart. So just keep a fork handy is the best thing I could tell you.
No worse feeling than when the burrito falls apart in your hands, though. That's just a tough scene right there.
You just feel so empty because like all you wanted was the burrito, and it's like now you got to get a spoon and like scoop it up because like you just feel like embarrassed because you're about to take a bite and the whole thing just in the back just falls apart. So
yep.
But it's really good. But like I'm with Jake, when I go to Chipotle, I get a bowl. I don't get burrito. I always get a bowl. So
absolutely.
Yeah. So Jake, man, this was awesome as always. Thank you for always taking the time to come on our show and talk some sports with us and have some laughs. Like I said, every time I got to think about your rant against Rose from Titanic. And basically just be
She's the bitch. She sucks.
She got away with murder. No one wants to hold her accountable. Here I am trying to do my part, but I don't think it's enough.
I'm not sure it was the better rant. The rant about that or the rant about the Roger Goodell chair at the draft where like all the beer farts and everything.
Hey, Craig, I give you credit, man. You remember some of the stuff that I've completely forgotten about, so I appreciate that. Thank you.
I can't remember which rant was better, but they're neck and neck in my opinion. So.
I mean, who wants to sit in that Goodell chair? That was like how out of touch is Roger Goodell in the NFL? They thought that people were dying to sit in the commissioner's chair the night of the draft. That was the stupidest thing I've ever seen in my life.
But Jake, man, we really appreciate you coming on the show. We love having you on. Best of luck with everything going on in Houston and all that stuff with all your success. I always look forward to your Jets videos. You're the only guy I know who could spend 45 minutes dissecting the impact of Mike White and Zach Wilson and what the future holds for Denzel Mims and everything. So if anybody could do it, you're the best in the business. So thank you again, man.
Guys, I always love joining you. We've been doing this for years now, so it's always fun anytime I come on with you. So continue success on your end, and we'll do it again soon. I'm sure after the Jets win the Super Bowl, I'll come back on.
All right, I'm going to hold you to that. All right, Jay?
Yes.
All right, take care of yourself, man.
You got it, fellas. Talk to you guys soon. Thanks for having me.
All right, have a good one, man. That is the one and only Jake Asman. Like I said, man, the Rose rant. I wish I had it, like, because it's got to be the funniest rant I've ever heard.
But he's not wrong with the and like I did my own like.
I watched Titanic and I'm like, yeah, he's really not wrong. She is a bitch. Like she's like.
If you really do an in-depth dive of Titanic and you really watch it, like Billy Zane in the movie, his actions in the movie are completely okay. I don't know where Craig went, but okay. I'm the one who's cutting out. What happened there?
But it's like, was that me?
Yeah, you just cut out. I was like, what the heck just happened?
I don't know.
But
over the cord.
But yeah, like I did my own, like when I do my own podcast every night. I haven't done an episode in God knows how long, but like I did one episode on Rose being a huge bitch, and if you really watch it, like Billy Zane's actions in the movie are completely justified. Like the dude's ready to marry her. Like I get it, he's not in love with him, but it's 1912. This is the shit that was going on back then. Like these marriages, like this, like these arranged marriages, that stuff was going on. But Rose was too proud of herself to be like, ooh, no, I don't want to marry him to like save my family. Like she was a complete bitch. Not only the fact that she's getting married, she cheated on him. She cheated on him with Jack. Like she's a complete scumbag.
But then the best part is like, dude, you couldn't make room on the chest.
That too. You know? Like she's just a bad person, Rose.
I would have been like, listen, if I was stuck in the middle of the ocean, and I don't think I'm alone here, okay, and my wife was like standing on the chest and everything, and I was in the cold water freezing, I'd be like, bitch, you better move, man, because I'm getting on that chest whether you like it or not. I was like, your ass is going overboard. So like, I was like, there's no way I'd be sitting there freezing my ass off. I'm like, I'd be like, even my teeth chattering, I'd be like, you can't move. Like,
make her feel bad.
Like, get the fuck out of the way. It's like, you know, like I'd be like dying of hypothermia, and I'm like, you need to get the hell out of the way. I'm gonna die in 2 seconds. You know, and she's like, oh, but I'll never let go, and she let go of him.
Yeah, she
let go of him. And like, you know, and then she's just like an old broad at the end of the movie, like by herself. I'm like, well, karma's a bitch. But between the Roger Goodell rant and the Rose rant are probably like my 2 favorites by Jake. They're like neck and neck. So,
like, I could go on all day about Rose being a bitch, but
yeah. All right, maybe we'll devote a podcast to it one of these days.
Good.
Yeah. It was actually funny, man, because the other day I came across some like the old Polar Opposite stuff I did, and I still think one of the best things we ever did on that show. That's why we were the best show on that network, by the way, was the Knob tournament. Remember the Knob tournament when we were doing like when we had the the rankings of the players and everything?
I was gonna say you cut.
Did it cut again?
Yeah, you're like cutting in. You're like cutting in and out. Like so, like I completely meant what you meant. Like when you were just about to talk about the Knob tournament, you just like cut in and out.
Yeah, it was like so. I was coming across like an old video where Matt and I were trying to pick seeds and pick players to be in the Knob tournament. Bro, the names that I was coming out with were fucking hilarious. Like we were pulling so many out of like we pulled like Grayson Allen, Jonathan Papelbon. Like we were coming up with so many awesome names. It was absolutely like one of the best. I stand by that segment all the way.
I was gonna say, I think when I first started, like when I was first assigned to you and Matt's show, yeah, I think that's when you guys were in like the second round or third round or one of the rounds or you guys just started the Knob tournament. I was like, oh, this is fucking great. I love this.
And I'll never forget. You know why I know it was a good thing? Because remember Jeff, who used to always call in and was just like such a fucking tool.
That guy, yeah.
He called in and he goes, "This is the greatest segment I've ever heard in my life." And like Matt and I we put so much effort into that segment, you have no idea. And I remember we were trying to find a woman to bring up to face Hope Solo, right? And I was like, man, I combed, I looked, I did everything and I could, and I came up with the best person. And I couldn't believe I pulled it out of my ass. And I said, Matt, it's the Fabulous Moolah. Because remember the Fabulous Moolah was like fucking like bullying all the women and pimping them out and all that.
Yeah.
And Matt goes, oh my God, she was a fucking jerk. It's like, and you understand, I cracked up. And the story was true. When I thought of that, I was in the sales meeting at work. And like, we were like around a boardroom table. And I was like, oh, this is killing me, because they don't really go to me when I was doing my sales meeting. I'd be like, who the hell are we going to put Hope Solo against? And like, it was like a fucking light bulb just went on. And I was like, it's the only one that makes sense. And it was perfect. And like, and I couldn't stop laughing when I came up with it. It was hilarious. That was hands down one of the best segments we ever did. One of the hands down. And like, you know why we were the best show on that network? Because none of those assholes would have ever thought of that.
No, none of them were doing that. None of them were getting interviews like we were. It was.
Remember the time we did you weren't there when we did the fantasy movie draft, like for football players?
Oh yeah, I wasn't there for that.
Oh my God, we were drafting like Icebox Becky O'Shea. We were drafting John Oxon from Varsity Blues, like Shane Falco. Like we came up with so many awesome ones. That was when Chad was our producer. I came up with so many good ideas. Like I really did. Like,
we can always bring them back.
You know, I got to figure out how I'm going to do it. The thing is, like, it's tough to do it on this. It's like it's more of an in-person thing, I think, rather than like, you know, that's why I like the studio, because I think it was a lot better. Right. But you understand, like I had so many awesome ideas. I came up with so much great shit. So, all right, before we get out of here, you got anything else?
Yeah, we didn't mention it. Two things. One, World Cup has been very interesting if you've been paying attention.
I have not, but fun fact, my niece is training the soccer players in Qatar.
Ooh.
Personal trainer. She works for a gym in the city called Dog Pound. General manager, and they invited her, the royal family invited her to go to Qatar to train like she was training the Swiss team. I think she was training the Qatar soccer team. So yeah, like it's really, really awesome accomplishment. I couldn't be more proud of her.
Oh shit, yeah, but like I'm gonna be honest with everyone watching and listening. I don't watch soccer. This is and when it's in the Olympics are the only time I'll ever pay attention.
It's weird times. It's just the USA game's at 1 o'clock today. I'm working. I don't already tomorrow.
I'm gonna be at work as well. But I will say, like, Saudi Arabia upsetting Argentina and Japan beating Germany. That's insane to me, because those are not only two of the powerhouse teams. Like, Saudi Arabia and Japan aren't known for like good soccer, and even the United States tying England. Like, that's insane. When have you ever heard of the United States? Now they're going into a possible cakewalk against Iran. When have you ever heard of the United States getting past the first round of advancing to the next round of the World Cup? You never have. Like, I feel like this World Cup has been crazy.
Yeah. Well, actually, what's going to be pretty cool is when the New York City Football Club stadium gets built by Citi Field. I would definitely go to a game there. I might
go to a game. Look, I've watched Ted Lasso, and I'm like, I might have to get into soccer now. Like, this is pretty interesting. And then there was the whole rumor of Woody Johnson buying Chelsea. And I remember I was talking to Mike Laws, and we were just like, yo, if Woody Johnson buys Chelsea, do we just become Chelsea guys, like, automatically? Like,
I mean, it's funny, actually, if you want to watch a really good show on FX, Welcome to Wrexham. I don't know if you've ever seen it. Wrexham is a football club, and they're owned by Ryan Reynolds from Deadpool.
Oh, I've seen. I want to get it. I want to watch that.
And Ryan Reynolds is like not really a big soccer guy. Like, he doesn't really know anything about soccer. But Rob McElhenney kind of knows a little bit about it and everything. And I think it's like a way for them to hide their money, because they make so much money. I mean, Ryan Reynolds makes like $20-30 million a movie now, especially with Deadpool being so successful. That so when they get there, like, Wrexham isn't really that good of a team. They kind of suck and everything, and like they play in like a shitty like area. Like the field is crap, the stadium is crap, and everything. And like they're just like hemorrhaging money to start, because they have to pay for like a new field, like they call it pitch.
Right.
It's like he's like $200,000 for this and this. It was hemorrhaging money to start. And then, they start listening to the fans because the Wrexham fan, like the people of Wrexham, like this is their baby. Like they love this team. Like they travel 5 hours by bus to go to away games and everything. So like they start listening to the fans, and like the fans start telling them like, oh, you should sign this guy, and they go sign this guy. And then like they become better. Right. And then you see like Ryan Reynolds is like really into it now. Like he's like not really bullshit. Like, because when they find out that Ryan Reynolds buys the team, they're like, oh, this is a big publicity stunt because he's a big celebrity in America and everything. But then he grows to like really, really like the team, and he really grows to really enjoy being around the guys and everything. It's a really good documentary. It's actually like a lot of fun to watch. So, yeah, one other note, MJF won the belt, which means basically AEW is now going to be living and dying by MJF for the next 2 years. You want my honest opinion? I said it again. I know people are going to hate me when I say this. Great promos. I'm just not a big fan of his matches. Like, I'm just not.
He's an average wrestler. He is. But you know what it is, though? His mic skills make up for it because he's that good on the mic.
It's not going to matter because he's just another Stone Cold now. Like, he can't be a heel. He's nothing. He's not a heel or a face. He's just MJF. Right. He's his own entity, but everybody loves him that it's not going to matter. It was like when Becky Lynch became the man, and she was a heel, but everybody loved her, so it didn't matter. She couldn't be a heel. And the same thing with Stone Cold. Stone Cold was just like, yeah, F you and, whatever. Same thing with The Rock. It was like The Rock was not really a face. He was a heel, but everybody just loved his promo work that you could never classify him as one or the other. And I see the same thing with MJF. So, all right, on that note, that'll do it for the Moffett on the Mic show. We ran a little later than we thought, but, when you're having fun hanging out with Jake Asman and Taylor Dahl, that's the price you pay sometimes. But thank you, everybody, for watching us live on Facebook. Thank you to the one and only Taylor Dahl. We love having her on the show to talk Jags football and Bears football and everything else. And, of course, the one and only Jake Asman. Check out his YouTube channel, The Jake Asman Show on YouTube. He really dives in. He gets some really, really good guests that cover the Jets. Connor Rogers, he's got him. Joe Caparoso's been on his show. He's gotten a lot really good stuff. He's always putting videos out daily about the Jets, so definitely check it out. And we always look forward to him coming on the show. He's probably our biggest known. What do you think, Clem? You think he's our biggest known celebrity?
Let me look at the Twitter followers real quick between them and the Pisano's the Pisano's have a good following with What's Wrong with Wrestling. So let me see.
By the way, the Pisano's kill me on the What's Wrong with Wrestling podcast.
They're like I just love listening to them. Like,
I can't stop laughing. Like it's and like what it's too. Andrew does amazing impersonations of wrestlers. He does amazing Kevin Owens. Now he started doing Finn Balor. Like when
my God, yes.
When Judgment Day comes out, he does Finn Balor, and he's like, and it's hysterical.
Okay, yeah. So according to Twitter, the What's Wrong with Wrestling guys have about 5,000 followers on their What's Wrong with Wrestling page, and Jake Asman has 14,600.
But actually, you know who has the most followers that's been on our show?
Gordon Damer.
Christine Wen.
Oh yes, Christine Wen.
She has like over 20,000 followers.
That's true.
So
I forgot we had that. I totally forgot we even had Gordon Damer on. That I just mentioned it.
That was a kick.
That was good. That was a good one. That was like you look back at like some of the people we've had on, and like we build good relationships with them. I know we talk about this all the time, but Jake, like even Jake mentioned it. He's like, we've been doing this for years now. We've been doing it since we were at the other program. So let's say 4 years now. We've been doing it. We've been having Jake on the show. Christine Wen, same thing. 4 years. Taylor Dahl, we made a great relationship with her. Christine Wen, Jamie, John Sheeran. All these VSK, Bryce Donovan, Jack Tomlinson, the wrestlers. Like, we've made such a good relationship with some of these guys. It's like, it's just fun having them on at this point.
Yeah, we just got to start opening it up a little bit more. Actually, you know what? I don't know if you want to try to do this. Are we doing a show next week?
I'm down.
let's see if we can try to get somebody from Creative Pro because they're doing their show next Thursday night.
That's right.
Maybe we can luck out and get somebody like good. I don't know if you want to just send out some feelers and see what happens.
I'll send some stuff out.
But maybe we could try to do something. Let's say maybe we'll get lucky. We'll catch somebody who's going to be part of the show.
Right.
So, but all right. Well, listen, that's going to do it. Thank you everybody for watching us on Instagram, Facebook. You can follow the show on Instagram, follow the show on Facebook. You can subscribe to Apple Podcasts, like and comment, and leave us a 5-star review because it makes us feel oh so special at the end of the day. I had an idea, and I wanted to know what you thought. Since we didn't really talk a lot about other stuff today,
Mm-hmm.
can you find a way to edit just the interview with Taylor and then edit the interview with Jake?
Yes.
And then put it out as 2 separate.
Okay.
And then let's see how it works. And then, if you have the time, I mean, I know you're busy with the fire department stuff. So, but
I can do that. I can do some, I can work on that.
all right, see what you can do. If you can't, don't worry about it. It's not a big deal. So, all right. So as of right now, we'll have a show next Monday night. If anything changes, we'll let you know. Have a great rest of the week. That's pretty much it. Klim, take care of yourself. Thank you for everything, holding it down like you normally do. Everybody have a great rest of the week. Stay safe wherever you are. Maybe back next Monday, but you'll know on next Monday. Have a great one, everybody.